Good morning, members, and welcome to this Planning Applications Committee meeting on the 29th of May. This meeting has been live streamed and will be made available on the Council website for public viewing. Remote participants, please follow the good practice guidance, which includes muting microphones and switching off your video when you're not addressing the meeting, writing speak in the Teams chat function when you want to contribute. If you're in the hall, you can do this on your iPhone or iPad. Please don't repeat contributions already made by other members. No material should be posted in the chat function if it is intended as part of the discussion. The usual standing orders apply, including that any votes will be undertaken by roll call. If any member has to leave the meeting, please either leave the Teams meeting for that period of time or write leave in the Teams chat function and then join when you rejoin the meeting so we can keep track on whether the meeting is quorate. All members should speak clearly and directly into the microphone when making contributions, and when referring to reports, please provide reference to the relevant page and paragraph to allow everyone to follow. Please focus contributions on areas where clarification is required or to propose an alternative to a recommendation. The usual standing orders apply, including that any votes will be undertaken. Tracy, can you confirm sederant and apologies, please?
Thanks, Chair. Good morning, members. Good morning, everyone. We've got 10 members present in total, 8 members present in the council chambers at HQ, being the Chair, Councillor Barretti, Councillor John Campbell, Councillor Davies, Councillor Dryborough, Councillor Hislop, Councillor McFarlane and Councillor Slater. I've got 10 members present on Microsoft Teams, being the Vice Chair, Councillor Blake, Councillor Crothers, Councillor Dashper, Councillor Drysdale, Councillor Hill, Councillor Jordan, Councillor Marshall, Councillor Thompson and Councillor Walters. One member not present at the start is Councillor Ian Howie, and I've got no apologies. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Tracy. And I confirm the remote participation of members at this meeting today. I'll now ask Tracy to, first I'll ask for declarations of interest, and that includes a declaration of interest after the site visit for agenda item 4, because some members may wish to make a declaration given that we had a site visit after the original declarations were made. Councillor Dryborough, please.
Declaring interest item 8, Chair Ash Planning Enforcement to go and have a look at that, so I'll withdraw from the Planning Committee at that time.
Thank you. Councillor Walters.
I'm not sure. I have a declaration of interest for item 4, but I wouldn't be joining in the conversation anyway because they can go to the site visit. So I'll just stay out of that.
Thank you very much, Councillor Walters. Councillor, is it Giusti? Who's the third band?
That's an objective.
Oh, that's an objector.
Pauline Drysdale.
Pauline Drysdale, please.
Good morning, members. Yes, I'd like to remove myself from item 4, please, as I wouldn't want any members of the public to think I predetermined this application. So I'll be removing myself once we've gone through the minutes of the previous meeting on item 3. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Councillor Drysdale. Councillor Slater.
Yes, Chair. Regarding that item, a member of my family was ill that day, so I didn't attend that site visit.
Can I get a point of clarity here?
Actually, I'll have Tracy come in, that'll be the best thing. But anyone who was present at the determination when the agenda item 4 started, whether they attended the site visit or not, are still able to participate in the determination should they choose to do so. Now, you've still got your microphone on, Councillor Slater, but I'll ask Tracy to clarify the position for every member.
Okay.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. That's correct. Members don't need to attend a site visit to take part as long as they heard the item and the representations at the previous meeting. So I will read out a list of members who are eligible to take part in that item when we come to item 4.
So, I think Lynn's declined her request. So if there are no other declarations of interest, I'm going to ask Tracy to refresh everyone's memory on responsibilities when attending site visits I'm going to ask Tracy to confirm who can determine this application, and then we'll move on.
Thanks, Chair. I did circulate some guidance to members, but just for those who might not have seen my email, we do have within the Code of Conduct at paragraph 7.13, it states that in respect of any site visits that have been decided upon or agreed by committee at the stage of consideration of an application, that members will follow the Council's procedure for such site visits as set out by the Council, and that with regard to any legislative requirements or notes or guidance or practice, and that remember that any such site visits are part of the decision-making process and as such are formal in nature and may have procedures set out by your Council. Now, when I refer to the guidance that our Council has on site visits, I'm not going to read the whole thing, but members should have access to that. I can circulate it again for any member that doesn't have it. Our procedures do state that no one other than a member or officer of the Council or parties eligible to speak at the Planning Applications Committee may participate in the site visit. Applicants, agents, objectors and other third parties are not permitted to address the committee during the site visit other than to point out any feature or relevance at or neighbouring the site. Questions can be asked on a site visit by members of the Planning Applications Committee for clarification, and officers will respond. So that's the information that was circulated to members about site visits. Thanks, Chair.
Thanks very much, Tracy. And I'll ask you to remind the members who can participate, but I'm going to have asked members to agree the minute of the previous meeting of the 24th April 2024. Is that a true record? Thank you.
Sorry, Chair.
Keith Walters, please. Councillor Walters.
Just on the minute, on the declarations of interest on page 14, it says on 2.5, just about this particular item, it says I made a statement of connection and I determined that this did not amount to an interest and I would remain in the meeting. Well, I actually said the opposite of that, was that I had a statement of connection and I wouldn't remain in the meeting, and that's shown by the fact that I actually left at the end of the item before that. So if I could just have that amended, that would be great. Thanks.
Thanks very much, Councillor Walters. So I'm sure Tracy is content to amend the meeting to reflect that position. And with that amendment, is everyone happy to approve the minute of April 24? Thank you very much, members.
Sorry, Chair. I've got an amendment as well. Apologies.
Oh, Pauline.
Thank you very much.
Councillor Drysdale.
Thank you, Chair. On page 14, 2.3, there's a slight error in that it says she had previously managed a catering business. That's not strictly true, because I still do manage a catering business, but we don't do food for private events anymore. So it's half correct, but I wouldn't want anybody coming back to me with that. So could we just make sure that's amended? And if Tracy, you wish to contact me, I can give you the further detail on that. Thank you. Thanks, Chair.
Again, Tracy, our clerk for the meeting will amend that. So with a further amendment, is everyone happy with the minute as set out in the paper? So there's two amendments to be made and then it will be a true record. Thank you very much, members. I will now ask our clerk, Tracy, to read out the procedure for today. Tracy, please.
Thank you, Chair. The Planning Applications Committee will consider each application in turn as detailed on the agenda. The case officer or other appointed officer will make a short presentation addressing the determining issues accompanied by digital images. Any late information, amendments or corrections will be reported at this time. Members may ask questions of officers following the presentation on points of clarification. The Chairman has been provided with a list of eligible representatives who have registered to speak at this meeting within the period specified in Council policy. No other persons will be allowed to speak. The Chairman will individually invite those who have registered in advance to speak to make their presentation, after which they may be questioned by committee members. No questions may be asked of members. The order of eligible parties being heard is as follows. third parties objecting to an application, third parties supporting an application, statutory consultees objecting to an application, elected members of Dumfries and Galloway Council who are not members of the Planning Applications Committee, and such members should withdraw from the meeting after making their presentation, then applicants or their agents. Representatives were offered the option of attending today's meeting in person, joining remotely through Microsoft Teams, or to provide a written statement to be read out on their behalf. Presentations will be strictly limited to 3 minutes per person, except for national and major developments, which by their very nature are more complex, where the time limit will be 5 minutes. The chairman of the committee will ask you to come to a conclusion if you take too long. Representatives are encouraged to use the time allotted to clarify any points they consider material and address the determining issues. Certain matters are not normally material planning considerations and will not be taken into account by the Council when deciding on a planning application. Representatives should not raise any new matters without explaining why they were not raised earlier with the case officer. Please do not repeat what is in the report, as members will have already read the report. After all the representations have been heard, the meeting is then in formal session and no members of the public may address the committee from the public gallery. The Planning Applications Committee will then proceed to determine the application.
Thanks very much, Tracy. So members, move on to agenda item 4 and we're in session. And I'll ask Tracy to remind us all who can participate in the determination of this application. And then I will ask Mr. Sutty to share some information with us. And then I will ask for the images of the site to be shown just as a reminder for us all. And then I'll go to members. So Tracy first, please.
Thanks, Chair. Members that were here when this was heard at the previous meeting that can participate in a vote are the Chair, the Vice Chair, Councillor Beretti, Councillor Blake, Councillor Campbell, Councillor Crothers, Councillor Davis, Councillor Drybra, Councillor Drysdale, Councillor Hill, Councillor Hislop, Councillor Jordan, Councillor McFarlane, Councillor Marshall, Councillor Slater and Councillor Thompson. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you very much, Tracy. Mr. Sutty, can you just inform the members of the information you have, please?
Thank you, Chair. I'll just take you through the slides from the April meeting. So basically the application site sits in between two existing properties, one on the left-hand side as you're looking at it there, the western side, just known as Site A initially, and then on the other side you've got Ladywell, an existing property. And you've got the elevations of the proposed house and floor plans. These are the proposed sections. Now, there are two pieces of information for those who weren't at the site visit, which were passed on to all the members which were present. There were questions asked about what the ridge levels of the respective properties are and would be. So looking at this picture here, unfortunately we don't have an elevation which shows it relative to the two existing properties. But if you look at that bottom left-hand picture, the ridge height, the main ridge which goes along there fronting the road, that would be 36 metres above the respective level. The property next door at Site A, we were told, would be 37.59 metres, and Ladywell, the property on the other side, has a ridge height of 35.163. So you can see from that there is a drop from Site A to Site B to Ladywell. The other bit of information that was requested and provided at the site visit was on the left-hand property there, which is Ladywell. I requested information just as to what that window was, and it was confirmed that is a bedroom window. And that's viewing through the site. The vegetation had been largely cleared when we visited the site. And that's looking up on the left-hand side there to Site A, and on the right-hand side, sorry, to Ladywell. And that's just views along the roads going out of Terregles on the right-hand side and back into Terregles on the left. So that's all I had, Chair.
Thank you very much, Mr City. So on that basis, members are back in session. Councillor Dryburgh, please.
Thanks, Chair. And look at this again. Although I wasn't on the site visit, I had been a previous site visit. I knew the area well. I think that we should go ahead with the recommendation as is in the report and approve subject to the conditions.
Thank you. That's a motion. Councillor Campbell.
Thanks, Chair. Good morning, members. Yeah, I did go on the site visit. It was very informative, and I would second Councillor Dryburgh's motion.
Thank you very much. Councillor Carruthers, Ian Carruthers.
Thanks, yeah, thanks very much. I would just to support the two previous speakers. My perception before I went there that the building was going to be higher and probably potentially domineering, but actually the reality was that it's being dropped, it's being lowered, and that was clarified on the day. Happy to support the approval. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Carruthers. Are there any alternative views? In that case, Tracy, Governance Officer, can you confirm the decision of the committee, please?
Thanks, Chair. Members have agreed to approve the application subject to the conditions detailed in the report.
Thank you very much. Move on to agenda item number 5. The formation of water sports area and inflatable water park, summer months only. Erection of shower block and storage units for water sports equipment. And formation of hard standing for use as fishing and car park area or car parking area, partial retrospective at Loch Ronald, Three Lochs Holiday Park, Kirkcowan, Newton Stewart. This is the full application, reference number 23/1325/full. The recommendation is to approve subject to conditions, and the case officer is Philip Glennon. Philip, are you with us?
Yes, Chair, I am.
Philip, just take us through your presentation when you're ready, please.
Yes. So, as the Chair has kindly pointed out, the application is for the formation of a water sports arena, a water sports area, an inflatable water park for the summer months only. For the summer months only, it is described as the 1st of May. It is being treated as the basis of the 1st of May.
Philip, slow down. We've got a
30th.
British Sign Language interpreter.
Apologies.
Philip, just a reminder from Councillor Dryburgh, yes, we have a BSL interpreter with us, so if you could start again, please. And for future reference, every other member of staff that's listening, would you please speak slowly to allow the interpreters to do their work on behalf of our colleague? Thank you. So you start again, Phil, please.
Yep. Apologies, Chair. As previously alluded, the application is for the formation of a water sports area and inflatable water park for the summer months only. Alongside this, there's the erection of a shower block and storage units for the water sports equipment and the formation of hard standing for use as fishing, alongside an associated car parking area. The application in question is partly retrospective, as both the shower block and storage unit have already been erected on site. And for the clarification for councillors, the summer months only relates to only the inflatable water park and the water sports area, and the councillors defining this period as the 1st of May to the 30th of September. Next slide, if possible, please. The following site location plan shows the application site. The application site equates to an area of over 3,000 square metres, which is located to the southern side of the C3 road. The application site in question is accessed through a private track which leads down from the C3 road into the application site, which is shown in red here. The surrounding land from the applicant is shown in blue, which dominates the area. It's considered that the proposal is acceptable in principle with policy 89 supports the development of outdoor tourist attractions and recreational facilities, and would also comply with the majority of criteria for MPPF policy 30. Could I have the next slide if possible, please? This slide just shows the existing block plan for the site. Previously to the site, according to Google aerial search and Google Street View, it was a vacant plot of land, which also includes Loch Ronald in this case, which is where the water sports area and inflatable water park will be located. Next slide, if possible, please. The following slide shows the application's proposed block plan. In this case, you can see that the proposed car parking is located to the right-hand side, further along the actual private lane. In this case, the proposed shower block and storage area is located close to the shoreline and be located in close proximity. The proposed water sports arena here can be shown to the left, with the area which is shaded in a sort of reddish colour being the water sports area which can be used for jet skis, canoes and other activities. The area in question will be marked out by buoyancy aids throughout its use. Could I have the next slide if possible, please? The following slide shows the proposed storage unit and proposed shower block, which are already in situ and retrospective consent is taken for. In this case, the proposed storage unit is located on the left-hand side of the slide, with the proposed shower block located on the right-hand side. In this case, it's considered that the proposed shower block and shower area are generally minor in nature and reflect of the countryside area and rural design due to the timber finishes and have very little visual impact and as such are acceptable. Could I have the next slide, please? The following slide gives an indication of what the inflatable water sports park will look like. Now, please note this is an inflatable water sports park, and there's actually no photos of this because when the site visit was conducted, the inflatable water sports park was not erected. It's considered that this is a relatively temporary feature for the summer months only, with the council conditioning this between the 1st of May and the 30th of September, with the application having to actually remove this outside of those time periods. On balance, it's considered that whilst the design is unconventional, it is considered that given the surrounding land is owned by the applicant and the relatively minor nature of the development alongside the condition which requires removal, it is considered acceptable in terms of design. It's also considered that the proposal in general is considered acceptable in terms of residential amenity, as there's no residential properties located nearby the application site, and as such it will not have any detrimental effects on the neighbouring amenity, and would also be very much compatible with the surrounding holiday park, some of which is previously developed and other bits are yet to be developed. Can I have the next slide, please, if possible? This is just, these slides should give councillors a bit of a visual context. In this case, the proposed photos here show both the storage unit and the shower block. The storage unit is the far left, the middle one is the shower block, with the right-hand side photo just giving a further visual context to the actual development. Next slide, if possible, please. The following slides just give a visual representation of what the area looked like on the day of the site visit. In this case, the water sports arena would be located directly in front of the photo on the left, with the photo in the middle just facing towards where the water sports arena would be, whilst the photo to the right is just where the car parking area would be, which is further along the private track. Next slide, please. I'm happy to take any questions from the councillors, should they have any. Thanks very much.
Thanks very much, Phil. Do we have any questions for our case officer? Did we ensure that the members that left the meeting have returned? Is Keith Walters back and is the other members back in session?
Yeah, I can confirm I'm back in. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Keith. Okay, so if there are no questions for our case officer, we'll go on to the first representations of the day. The first person to address the committee is John R. Hosey, an objector, and it's a statement to be read out by the clerk. It's 3 minutes for this agenda item, so if the representation goes beyond 3 minutes, we'll have to draw that to a conclusion. I presume everybody knows that there's a limit to the amount of information we can share in 3 minutes, but whenever you're ready, Tracy, please.
Thanks, Chair. statement from the objector. From the outset, I wish to state that we believe our position is not being treated fairly or equitably, and that the 7 days notice of the Planning Committee's meeting is inadequate. This timescale is unreasonable in terms of preparation and being able to articulate our position comprehensively and in a considered fashion. There are a number of local authority strategy documents, including reference to national policy framework, and this is therefore our contention that this is unreasonable within your given time frame. Furthermore, the layperson requires to be afforded time to give these documents full consideration and determine if indeed the perspectives being adopted by the report are in fact accurately aligned to these strategies, and similarly to fully understand the scope and relevance of all the quoted council policies. There remain serious doubts that our objections have been understood, and much of the commentary in your report is superficial, especially in relation to the supposed economic benefits of the facility, and that the work undertaken by SAP, Ecology and Environmental Limited, is partial, desk-based and misses crucial facts. The tone of the report is dismissive of the details of our objections and has a sense of formality and inviolability to the entire planning process. This is not good for local democracy, and the committee may well be able to procedurally endorse the recommendations of the report, but I would ask, can you do this with clear consistency and a sense of integrity? Now, notwithstanding my concerns, I would like the following noted for the record. 1. Principle of development. Any contribution to the local economy will be negligible and might have provided short-term gain for the park owners, but there will be no wider benefit to the local rural economy. Employment opportunities will be restricted to seasonal and casual employment, and with the customers assumed to be already domiciled in the caravan park, this will only add additional entry and higher fees for the immediate benefit of the park owners, with no knock-on impact or diversification of the wider rural economy. In addition, promoting significant increases to private car use along a road that does not contribute positively to the sustainable travel or encourage patrons improved access to the natural environment, when this proposal in essence is all about undermining that natural environment with artificial noise, visual pollution and with the general disturbance of the peace and tranquility of the countryside. In short, this proposed development is not commensurated with the current facilities and assets at this location. Siting and design. The ownership of the land is relevant to the aesthetics of the location. The landowner does not own the vista or the experience of the wildness of the site. Described as unconventional by the officer in the report, the visual amenity is clearly represented as a subjective experience, and we require more than one opinion on that matter. Perhaps the authority would also find a giant mobile phone mast in the middle of the loch as unconventional, but not harmful to the visual amenity. But without detailed knowledge of the reference policies, that's 3 minutes, Chair.
Thanks very much, Tracy. And we come to our first speaker of the day, Jim Stewart, who's representing Mr. Mark Seaton, the applicant. So Jim Stewart can come forward, please. Jim, you will have 3 minutes to address the committee. I'll remind you with 30 seconds to go to draw your presentation to a conclusion. And if you'd be kind enough to wait in case members of the committee have questions for you, I'd be grateful. So just whenever you're ready, Mr. Seaton, thank you.
Hi there. I've been the park manager for 20 plus years at Three Lochs Holiday Park, and within that time it's slowly built up over the years. This is the water sports, which is the main concern, I think, with this committee meeting. The water park, anyway. We tried it last year to see if it would work. It was very successful. A lot of people used it. It seemed as if it was going to be well worth doing. So we then found out that we would possibly need planning permission, although it's basically an inflatable bouncy castle on the water for a period of time. So anyway, so we've came to this conclusion that we've come to planning. The issues that was spoken by Mr. Hosier, who's a previous caravan owner on Holiday Park, he's had issues down there at that area before. He said it was interfering with the fishing, which you can see by the maps. There's 3 lochs and ample fishing areas. We don't have any issues with any of that. The road that runs down the side of the loch runs right to the farm. The reason that the car park was put in place was because they were parking along the side of the road and making it hard for the tractors to go up and down to the farm. So we introduced that area as a parking area. As you can see by the slide, it wasn't used very much at all. So it's there as for the fishermen, basically. We see this as a small thing that runs through the summer. We don't anticipate to make it any bigger. We've got the showers there, and it's all done biodegradable products that's used in the showers. That's it, really. Hopefully you'll pass this. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Mr. Stewart, and thanks for being so brief. Councillor Beretti, please.
Thank you, Jim, for that presentation. 3 lochs. Questions, very briefly, if you want. How many years has 3 lochs been running? And has progress in 3 lochs been slow? And are there many people who live actually near 3 lochs that would be impacted? And I know you said that there are fish, I believe there's carp in that loch, but it's not really that well. If I'm not mistaken, I know that there are fishermen that go up there, but how often do they go?
Thank you. The caravan park's been there since 1974. It's grew more recently from 2014 when Mr. Mark Seaton bought the Holiday Park. It's probably doubled in size from around 100 units to around 200 units now. It doesn't really impact locally, apart from jobs, which we bring to with the Holiday Park, which is we're open all year round, so it's the jobs are there all year round. We employ 8 people, and then all our seasonal workers, which the water park, in a sense, brings an extra 4 people to work for us for the summer period. Also within that, the reason we were doing this and had this was because we want to try and control the area down there, because it's always been used for jet skis and it's always been used for paddleboarding and other water sports. So basically, by having that there, means that we can have someone there to look after and basically bailiff the place. And the carp fishing's basically Loch Herring. It's not Loch Ronald. That doesn't really affect it too much. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Beretti again.
Sorry, Jim, one further question I forgot to ask. I know that this site and many others usually have a small shop in situ so that residents don't need to go to local shops if they're only wanting, say, for instance, a couple of litres of milk or some bacon or stuff like that. But would I be right in saying that the site shop isn't sufficient, and therefore residents would in fact have to use local facilities if they wanted to shop on a bigger scale?
Yeah, the shop up at the Holiday Park, I'm not sure the relevance of this, but the shop up at the Holiday Park does just do basics. Everybody goes out and about to do their normal shopping. Yeah.
Thanks, Councillor Beretti.
Just come back. The relevance is that, as was pointed out, that it wouldn't influence local trade. Well, we know that area very well, and I know that people who've gone there have to go to other areas to get whatever they want. They can't use the holiday park, so hence why the size of the shop was important to me.
Mind you, the application is not for the shop today, and it's sometimes useful that local businesses get some support from the tourism industry. Any other questions for the applicant's agent? Councillor Slater?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Thank you for the report. On page 31, item 1.5, there's a number of SEPA applying river low risk, medium risk, and planning surface water high risk. Could that be explained in more detail, what these risks actually are? Thank you.
The SEPA, the constraints on the river, is that what you're?
Yes, it's item 1.5 on page 31. There's a number of SEPA planning, medium risk.
Councillor Dryborough?
That's on the report that officer wrote, not what the objector. So I don't think, sorry, the representative, I don't think the representative can answer a question that the officer actually wrote a report on. So I think that question is irrelevant in this sign.
Which is fine, but it gives the opportunity to the representatives who want to respond. But that's fine. We'll leave it. That's been done, David. Any other questions? Councillor Howie? Councillor Hill, please.
Hi, thank you. Can I just ask, the water sports, is it solely for the use of the people that are staying on the holiday park, or is it open to the general public to book and go along to, or potentially youth groups from the area, schools from the area, so that families and children can attend this type of activity locally in the West? Thank you.
Yes, we would dearly love to be able to make sure that anybody can use it. Really, that's what we want to do.
Councillor McFarlane, please.
Yeah, that's contrary to the report, where the recommended decision is that the holiday park should not be open to general public. So clearly, if we were going to support this, then it would be in the officer's recommendations, which would mean that it wouldn't be available to general public.
It's also contrary to the recommended decision on page 35, 5.1. But I know that the park is currently advertising this facility online, and it does not make any reference to restrictions to the use of the facility by park residents and users only. So it's in members' hands what we do with this. You have the application before you. But we're still in questions for the representative. So if there are no further questions, Mr. Stewart, thanks very much for coming forward today. Members are now in session. I had Councillor McFarlane indicate he wanted to speak first, but Councillor Dryborough, if you don't.
Yeah, Chair. I'm just wondering, just in relation to that last exchange that we had there in relation to general public, and you're saying that it's been advertised. I'm wondering, and perhaps it should have been a question for the case officer as to why we would be looking to restrict it and not allow the general public. And I'd have been interested to know what his thinking was on that, but clearly we had the opportunity and didn't take it.
I'll ask Mr. Sutty. I'm sure it's something to do with traffic flow, but Mr. Sutty?
Thank you, Chair. It was a specific query that the case officer put to the agent for this application, and the agent replied on the 15th of February, and I quote, "All above is owners and visitors of Three Lochs Holiday Park only." So basically that's how it's been assessed. The roads comments were submitted on the basis that it was for the owners and the residents only. The concern might be widening it out in that you are bringing on, encouraging more people up the roads, which would be the issue. So in other words, the case officer and myself have considered this on the basis of what has been applied for and the information we've been given. But equally, I was party to Mr. Hosey's letter and did check online, and there doesn't appear to be a restriction. Whether or not it could be argued that the advert is really just for information for people using the site already, but it doesn't say this is for residents only.
So we have a real challenge for today, members, because this application restricts the use. If we agree the recommendation by our case officer, development shall only be used by guests for the holiday park. How do we manage that? Because we cannot put a condition on that we cannot manage or monitor. And it may be that you will reflect maybe a bit more seriously on the implications of making this an open to the public application, because it's clearly what the agent said today, and that's now a matter of public record. Councillor Beretti.
Thank you, Chair. I've no objections to the application, and I think it's that point there that you've just highlighted which is really needs to be thoroughly thought out. Is should it be open to the public? Should it not be open to the public? I happen to know that road quite well because I've been up that road so many times in my youth. Yes, it's not the best road if you've got a lot of traffic on it, because there are very few passing places on it. But I also know that this is not the only water sports centre that would be available during the summer. So,
but we're looking for a decision now. Councillor Driver, please.
Thanks, Chair. We're here to look at the application that's in front of us, not that something come forward in the future. The application in front of us has got conditions applied to it that the officers have suggested that we as a planning application committee should agree with. So that part, I would say that we go with the recommendations in this application, and if something happens in the future that they need to come back for a planning application for anything else, that's up to the applicant, it's not up to us.
I think the problem will arise on how we manage and monitor the condition, because we're not in a position to place conditions on an application that we cannot enforce, and that will be an issue for our staff. But I'll come back to you, Councillor Driver. Councillor Carruthers did want to come in as well. Councillor Carruthers, please.
It was that very point. I wonder if we could advise in regards to the meeting of the test for the reasonableness, so on and so forth, in regards to that condition. And after that, I was in mind to support Councillor Driver. That's another application could have come back in if required. But again, it comes down to enforceability and so on and so forth. But if we could add advice in regards to the test, now that would be applied. But beyond that, I think for me it'd be whether there's a real risk of overloading that roadway with vehicular traffic. Thank you, Chair.
If anyone wants additional information at this stage, the only thing we can do is refuse the application and ask Roads again to consider this in the context of being a publicly accessible facility rather than constrained or restricted to the park users. Now, I'm in members' hands. I'd be inclined to refuse it and have the applicant submit the information that is accurate and appropriate, and then let the authorities determine on the basis of it. Because I would refuse it on the basis that it hasn't been assessed for public use, and the application today states quite clearly it's only for the park users. Councillor Driver.
I'll come back to what I said before. Each application is based on its own merit, Chair. The information that was given to planning officers. They would have made, a decision on the information that they had been given. They have made that decision coming forward. So I would suggest the recommendation is we approve according to the report and the conditions in there. If there's a need to come back later on, that's up to the applicant. It's not up to us as a planning applications committee. 94% of the planning, as you're aware, 94% of the planning applications didn't come to the planning applications committee. So we cannot say what the applicant's going to do. We can't tell the applicant what to do. We must base our decision on the report that we have in front of us. And you can put as many questions and queries on it, but we make the decision on the report that's in front of us.
I'm happy to make mine on information the applicant's agent provided in public and recorded. But that's only for me. I have Councillor Carruthers followed by Councillor McFarlane, please.
Thanks, Chair. I wouldn't mind just in regards to, I did ask a particular question, maybe I'll frame it a slightly different way. In regards to the condition that's can it be if we were to approve this and general members of the public, could it then be enforced thereafter? I think that's the point that was being touched upon, but I would agree completely with Councillor Driver in regards to the information we've got. I've got no reasons whatsoever why we should refuse this. At a personal level, I'd happy to support it being approved, but there was a question round about the enforceability of, if general members of the public had to use it, ultimately it should really be a further application that comes forward. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Carruthers. I'll have Mr Sutty come in on your point and then I'll go to Councillor McFarlane.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, basically on the second page of your agenda, under point 4 is to do with conditions. This reflects Scottish Government Circular 4/1998 on the use of conditions, and there are 6 tests. So a condition has to be necessary, relevant to planning, relevant to the development to be permitted, enforceable, precise and reasonable in all other respects. So I think the 2 issues really here in respect of recommended condition 1 are, is it necessary and is it enforceable? The reason why I think it is necessary is because that's what the applicants applied for. We've got it confirmed in writing from the agent that this is for the owners and visitors only, so it's not for wider public use. We've assessed it on that basis. Roads officers have assessed it, so I think it is necessary. In terms of enforceability, I accept that there is probably some challenges with how to actually do that, but if the issue is a potential increase in the volume of traffic using that road, if it was causing real concern, then that would be a point at which we could clearly identify that it had extended beyond what was already going on. But 200 units, that's a lot of units on the site at the moment, so it's going to be hard to perhaps take the view that this is going to increase it to an exponential degree. My recommendation here is not to refuse it. It's on the basis that we've assessed it as is. You've got a condition. I would agree with what Councillor Dryborough and Councillor Carruthers have basically said, which is that's what's before you today. If the applicant considers that that condition is unworkable for them, they have the option of applying under section 42 to have that condition struck. You do have the option today as well, simply not to attach condition 1. It's only a recommendation. So if members are happy to say, well, the level of increase of traffic is not such that we're concerned about it, then you can simply approve it with what is condition 2 becoming condition 1. But for the reasons set out before, I think it is appropriate to have that condition on.
Okay, on that basis, I'll withdraw my proposal because Mr Sutty's advice is that we should go with the report in front of us today. Councillor McFarlane.
Yeah, I'm disappointed in that, Chair, because I was just about to support your proposal, because we've had the situation whereby the representative of the applicant has said that they intend to try and open up to general public, and that causes me concern because obviously our officer has made the decision based on the information that was available to them, based on the application. I understand what Councillor Dryborough and what Councillor Carruthers are saying. However, I do consider that what we've got here is at the last minute a change in circumstances, which would, in my belief, mean that the roads officer may well change their opinion. But in light of the fact that you've withdrawn yours, I'm not intended to propose it further. Thank you.
I support your sentiments entirely, but if the recommendation from officers is that we shouldn't interfere with the application before us, so be it, although very often we do take information from applicants' agents and consider that as part of the deliberations. But anyway, we have a proposal from Councillor Dryborough. Second, Councillor Drysdale.
Thanks, Chair, for letting me in. Can I just, through yourself, ask governance if I'm able to enter the debate, because I entered the room a few minutes late. I'd just like to make a comment that I think is really pertinent, but I don't know if I'm able to do that because I came into the room just after the agenda item had started.
Tracy?
I think you were online before that.
Yeah, but I'd gone offline.
Okay.
Because I didn't know how to find out when the meeting had restarted. I mean, I do understand this case entirely. I don't think I missed very much at all.
Yeah, if you feel you've heard enough of the debate to take part, yes, that's fine.
That's great. I just wanted to alert members and also David and yourself, Chair, to the fact that it very much, in my opinion and my experience, and I know Councillor McFarlane might be able to help me with this one, With regards to water ownership, in Scotland, the use of land, the centre of a loch is not owned by anybody, but I don't know if this caravan park actually owns that strip of land, which makes a difference with regards to whether the public can come through and drive past caravans where children are concerned. It is different because we've got two areas in another loch in Dumfries and Galloway that actually own the land and one doesn't, and the rules are different. So we have to be careful of that in terms of public safety. It's just a thought, that's all. I'm just letting you
I
think
am
about
sure
it.
that will be a civil matter, Councillor Drysdale, and no part of the planning process. If someone wants to debate or determine who owns land, then that is a civil matter, not part of the process we use when we consider applications. So might be relevant, but it's not part of the planning process.
Okay, thanks, Chair.
So, Councillor Beretti.
I'd just like to second Councillor Dryburgh's proposal and take it as the officer's recommendations for this application.
And does that include the retention of both proposed conditions?
Yes.
That is Councillor Dryborough.
Yep, that's
Councillor
correct.
Beretti as well, okay. Can you confirm the decision of the committee, please, Tracy?
Thanks, Chair. Members have agreed to approve the application subject to the conditions detailed within the report.
Members, move on to agenda item number 6, an application for the reprofiling of garden ground and installation of concrete kerb and granite boulders along boundary and associated works at New Abbey Cornmill, New Abbey. This is a full application, reference number 19/1733/full. The recommendation is approved subject to conditions, and the case officer is John Hiscox. John, I'm sure you heard the request to speak slowly for the benefit of our interpreters, and whenever you're ready, thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I'll try to speak slowly, as requested. Thanks for the introduction. This application is in New Abbey, south of Dumfries, and in this slide you can see the application site edged in red. It's dotted red, and then the block of the core mill itself is fully coloured in red. I'd like to ask the committee to note the areas in blue, which are also in control of the applicant, including the mill pond area in the bottom of the slide, the fish pond area top left, and the just next to that and opposite the core mill itself, the car park serving the site. The core mill is a Category A listed building with public access for visitors. New Abbey's conservation area covers all of the locality. The committee is asked to note that the mill pond and the fish pond form part of the Category A listing, and also to note that Church House to the west and Abbey House to the south are Category B listed buildings. An old house behind the church house and opposite the mill pond is a Category A listed building. Okay, this next slide shows the existing layout as submitted in the 2016 application, which was refused by committee in 2017. The red dotted line, which you can just about make out curving down through the middle of the slide, identifies the centre line of the hedge. There's a rectangle which is not showing up particularly clearly just in the roadway and to the left of the tree, which you can see middle bottom of that slide. It's actually shaded yellow, but you can't necessarily see that. That's a bit better. So see the long rectangle, that represents the approximate footprint of an HGV vehicle lining up to negotiate the corner by Church House. If you could zoom out again, please. Thank you. And on that site, the tree in the bottom of the screen is, at the bottom of the slide is a cherry, and in the top is a birch. The birch is to be retained as part of this scheme, and the cherry is to be felled. Okay, this next one is the original layout plan from the current application, and this plan shows how a row of interlocking boulders were to be placed along the road edge with a new hedge planted behind, which you can just about make out in this one in green shading. The boulders were intended to maintain the curvature of the road edge in this original scheme, and I would ask the councillors to note the location of Church House, which is in the bottom left corner of this slide. Moving on to the current layout, which is what you're considering today. In this version, the boulders are alternated with spaces between, and a hedgerow is intended to partially cover the backside of the boulders. The committee is asked to note the proposed change to the alignment of the hedgerow to represent the most onerous swept path overhang for multiple vehicle types, including 16.5 metre long articulated HGVs. The plan also shows the intention to plant a new cherry tree. Moving into detail, this is the original 2016 application, a sectional drawing across it. It shows how the boulders would have been set into a cured concrete base with 300 to 350 millimetres of boulder projecting above road level. The new section of beech hedgerow would have been planted behind with the intention of overhanging the back of the boulders after the garden edge had been built up with imported soil. This is the superseded version of the road edge detail in the current application. It shows a subtly different configuration than previously, although the effect would have been similar, with a 300 millimetre to 350 millimetre of boulder projecting above the road level. And the boulders are shown to sit on a metal dowel to allow for movement if struck by a vehicle. And the current road edge detail, the configuration isn't substantively different in this drawing than the last one. The boulders are set back a little further from the road edge, and the additional detail shows how a temporary chain link fence would be installed, which would be kept in place until the new hedge is established. This next plan is just included to show boulder spacing. This is from the superseded version in the current application. And this plan of the road edge is in the original scheme, which shows the closer positioning of boulders. I'd ask the committee to note that the current scheme is highly similar to the superseded version in the last slide in terms of boulder spacing, but we don't have a similar new plan in close-up for the latest version. This is a sectional drawing included because it provides a good visual representation of the relationship between the road, vehicles likely to use it, the intended boundary, and the adjoining garden to the corn mill. Notes on this plan describe new concealed continuous concrete foundation to road edge incorporating gravel-filled drainage channel. Moving on to photos. This one, as it says, is from the A710 junction looking southwest with the corn mill on the left. The entrance to the car park is on the right with Church House and Old House in the rear of the view. Photograph 2 here shows the existing hedge and fence enclosing the southwest corner of the corn mill's garden from the car park entrance. This next one is a view from the junction looking back towards the A710 to the main road with the front wall of Church House appearing in the left of the picture, and the corn mill is behind the hedge and the trees to the right-hand side of the picture. This is, as it says on the slide, looking northeast from the front of Old House to the site. Actually, sorry, correction, that's from the front of Church House to the site. My apologies. You should note that the tree in the centre is the cherry tree to be felled to facilitate this development. This photograph looks across the southwest site corner towards Abbey House, again from close to Church House. This one shows the situation last autumn 2023, with regard to the inner roadside boundary. The rest of the hedge and the cherry tree is outside that fence. This photograph was taken by the previous case officer in November 2019, and it shows damage to the road edge outside the hedgerow. Church House is to the right, and the mill pond area is to the back of the picture. The next few photos are from the presentation shown to the committee in 2017, just to give an idea of now and then. Pretty self-evident, this is from the A710 looking towards the site with the car park just in the right-hand side of that view, and you can make out the birch tree with its white bark in the centre, just to the right of the corn mill. This, again, from 2017, is it shows the affected boundary to the corn mill to the left, and you can see then the birch and cherry trees in this photo. This one, I just asked the committee to note the road damage in the picture, the temporary fencing and gapping in the hedge, which the fencing was there to protect. This one's simply as per the annotation on the slide, showing the junction between the U214N and the U212N, and looking straight at the site. This is showing what the situation was inside the site in 2017. Another one. Again, you can see the tree next to the green fencing, which is the cherry tree to be felled. Before the representative steps up, my apologies, I haven't quite finished yet. There's a slide missing there. So my notes to close on are as follows. The committee is asked to note that there are no objections raised by consultees, including the council's own heritage specialists. Letters of objection are submitted by interested parties that relate principally to harmful effects on the heritage resource, hence the reason for the application being referred to the committee for determination. Historically, in recent years, traffic passing by, largely associated with the New Abbey sawmill situated to the west, has tended to impinge on the site because vehicles are manoeuvring to ensure clearance past Church House. The proposed reworking of the boundary is proposed to make sure that to make that manoeuvre more achievable while staying within the confines of the road. The committee will be aware that the original scheme was refused at the Planning Applications Committee in April 2017. The reason to refuse was based solely on impacts on the New Abbey Conservation Area, citing Local Development Plan 1, as it was, Policy HE2 and Section 64 of the 1997 Listed Buildings and Conservation Areas Act. Specifically, it was stated within the reason for refusal that the alteration would not preserve or enhance the character and appearance of the conservation area. Subsequent to the 2017 decision and prior to the current 2019 application, Historic Environment Scotland consulted with the New Abbey community. It should be noted that while the New Abbey Community Council has twice stated that it does not object, its responses clearly highlight concerns but recognise the position that the applicants find themselves in. Mention is made of potentially looking at other alternatives to the current proposals, including altering the edge of the mill pond area to the south of the junction. However, it is the current proposal under consideration which Historic Environment Scotland, as applicants, has found to be the preferred and practicable option. The Community Council is clearly sympathetic to the issues faced by the applicant, but is not fully convinced that this is the right option. The committee will be aware that 4 of the interested parties who have submitted objections are intending to speak today. members are asked to note that the matters raised in representations are set out in detail in section 3 of the committee report. Section 4 of the report sets out officers' views on the main issues arising, being those of impacts on heritage fabric, impact on heritage settings, road safety, and impacts on residential amenity. It also concludes that, taking into consideration all matters raised in representations, the planning balance falls in favour of the scheme. Therefore, conditional approval is recommended. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, John. Any questions for our case officer, Councillor Barretti?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Thank you, John. Could you bring back up some of the slides going back to the cross-sectional of the prior to the improvement and then the new improvement? Yeah, if I'm not mistaken, that's prior to the improvement. Is that correct? And that bottom section below the mass boulders, what you want to call them, that was what it was. And then the new one.
This is the scheme proposed in 2016 and refused in 2017. This is the scheme originally proposed under the current application in 2019. And this is the current version proposed under revisions submitted this year.
Sorry, just want to ask John, I'm assuming that new version is reinforcing the road from the damage that HGVs are causing, which we've seen in other images. Is that right?
That is part of the purpose of the application. The remainder of the purpose is to protect the Abbey Garden area and boundary. But what you can see there, which is not necessarily easy to pick out, is that the road surface slopes down to the road edge, and then there is bearing in mind it's this. Oh, can I move on one slide, please? That's right. Bear with me. Buttons are slow. This one, you can just about make out between the boulder and the slope of the roadway that is separated by a small area of ground which is to be grassed. Can you make that out? Can you zoom in, perhaps, please? Yeah. So you've got their roadway, and then grass surface, and then obviously the boulder supported on a dowel. Just for clarification.
Yeah, that's clarified it for me, Chair. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Councillor Barretti. Councillor Slater, still questions for our case officer?
Yes, thank you, Chair. One or two questions here. You show damage to the road, but how long has that damage been there? Is it a few months, few years, or whatever? And another point I'd have to say is that hedges are more in keeping, and if a vehicle hits a hedge or drives into a hedge against a boulder, I honestly find it difficult that you're going to put boulders right next to a narrow road. Whereas hedges, if hit at all, they wouldn't really do much damage at all to the vehicle, but I feel it's the wrong thing to do on a road like this. Thank you.
Chair, may I? Yeah, the design is intended to allow HGV vehicles it's their oversail, which would pass over the boulders.
Yes, what I'm saying for here is boulders beside the road are not necessarily a good thing. If a car or a vehicle hits them at all, which that could possibly happen, whereas against a hedge, the car is more likely to survive. So I feel it's not in keeping with the village. I don't believe that putting a row of boulders down the
David,
side.
we're in questions for
Sorry?
the case officers, no discussions about the merits of a hedge.
Okay.
And if you're not happy with the proposal, you can make an alternative proposal when we come to determination. We've still to listen to the 4 objectives that we have. Councillor Dryborough?
Sorry, Chair. I would like to answer some questions raised by Councillor Slater.
Please do.
Just taking you back to this photograph, that's 2019. So we've got 4.5 years of certainly looking at that damage. And I think it's likely, given the amount of damage it would have been there prior to that, that hasn't just happened in 2019. I would just answer that one. And just with regard to the boulders, our roads planning manager, our roads planning service has been involved in dialogue prior to the revisions coming in, and they also were mindful of the potential impacts of siting boulders next to the roadway. But they are happy with it in terms of the overall conclusion, the overall scheme, because it balances it being a deterrent and also an element of protection, whilst not proposing an unacceptable impact to vehicles.
Thank you, Councillor Driver.
Are we a planning applications committee or a driving instructor school? That's all I'm going to say.
Okay, right. Questions for the case officer? Any other questions for our case officer? In that case, no. We have 4 registered speakers. The first person registered is David Gavai, an objector via Microsoft Teams. David, are you with us?
I'm here, Chairman.
Very good. David, you will have heard the process laid out. You will have 3 minutes to address the committee. I will remind you of 30 seconds to go to draw a presentation to conclusion. If you'd be kind enough to wait until when members may have questions for you, I'd be grateful. So just whenever you're ready, David, thank you very much.
Thank you very much. My name is David Cavey, and I live at Church House, which is obviously one of the main properties affected by the current ongoing situation. Originally, I didn't oppose the proposal, but I do now after having lived here for 6 years. I feel that the proposal is unlikely to solve the key issues. The lorries are still going to find it difficult to make the turning, particularly around Church House. Hitherto, they haven't used the whole width of the road, but the turning could be made much easier by simply moving the boundary wall of the mill pond, something which has been supported by New Abbey Community Council but has not been taken up by Historic Environment Scotland. I feel that the proposal puts HESs and also other commercial interests ahead of the residential interests, particularly in relation to Church House. Furthermore, we have not been consulted at all by HES, despite being mentioned many times in the submissions. The only person that has taken an interest has been one of the ward councillors, and she seemed fully aware of the issues involved. If approved, I have further concern that when the roadworks start, one of the factors in the presentation that was made earlier was that there was no picture of the turning round by Church House and along towards the sawmill, which would have shown clearly that it was a difficult turning. And once the roadworks start beside the corn mill, where are those lorries going to go? Because there is no other route. And the only comment that's been made is that roads are happy with what is going to be done. But I don't see, if there is any narrowing of the road, even temporarily, how those lorries are going to get up. So in conclusion, I feel that Church House is still no more protected than it was, that also the preservation and conservation of the corn mill has been to some extent compromised, certainly the appearance of it. And really the only real beneficiary of this scheme is actually the commercial one. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks very much, David, for being concise. Any members, any questions for David Gavai? In that case, David, thank you very much for making your presentation today.
Thank you.
The next speaker we have is Anita Hutton, who's an objector and appearing in person. So, Anita, if you'd like to come forward, please. As Anina, yes, my apologies. I'm sure you'll have worked out the process by now. Presentation whenever you're ready. I'll remind you with 30 seconds to go, and you should remain for a moment in case members have questions for you. Anina, whenever you're ready, thank you.
Okay. The New Abbey Community Council has significant misgivings that the proposed solution is the most effective and environmentally acceptable one. And they include road engineer, the chairman is a road engineer who's looked at this over many years, and also a lorry driver who's worked at the sawmill and made that turn also over many years. The case officer identifies safety as a key issue in his report. HES did cite safety of visitors and staff within the garden, which you've seen on the photographs, when in dispute with the roads department as a reason for needing to protect their boundary. It remains on the books, but it isn't terribly significant. There's never been public access in the area of the garden lying below the road at the south end of the site. You saw a metal barrier which keeps people away from where the road level is considerably above the garden ground. The cherry tree, described as collision prone in the report, has suffered a broken branch years ago, but with correct pruning, there's little danger of falling debris, which is also cited in the report. It is actually been deemed to be in good condition by the tree surgeons. The most significant safety issue is for pedestrians and cyclists in the road, where the eroded verge has been left unrepaired, you saw that, as a deep rut for years, with the sharp edges of the original edge of the road left. Dangerous to tyres, to cyclists, certainly. The proposal will make the situation in the road more dangerous. Visitors walking in this narrow road up to reach the mill pond and enjoy the area without the tall hedge will congregate in the road to take photographs and look at the mill wheel. There's no pavement, and vehicles will come round the blind corner at Church House at greater speed, not the big ones who have to go really, really slowly, but all the other ones, and they already go quite fast. It's not appropriate to install a chain link fence with or without obscuring fabric for a further years for the hedge to grow. The report suggests it'll all be put back in 2 years, that a hedge will grow. Absolute nonsense. The report implies that this narrow road is the only access, and you've just heard it again, to the sawmill. But the U212 has a much straighter line to the sawmill and is now routinely used to take bulk wood chip to an associated...
You have 30 seconds to go, Anina.
Yeah, to take wood chip directly through the village. In the past, long wheelbase HGVs have used exactly that route. All other HGVs, including the timber wagons bringing logs, can get round the corner with care. In each version of the scheme since 2016, greater road widening has been demanded by highways, prioritising vehicles over our heritage and safety of the people who live and visit New Abbey. The birch tree you saw will also be compromised by this, since half of its root area has to be dug up in order to achieve this solution. It's not a good solution, and it should be rejected.
So no questions. Thank you very much, Anina. Thank you for being present today. We now have Martin Robertson, who's an objector in person. Martin, if you'd like to come forward, please. Same arrangement, Martin. I'm sure you'll know the process now. 3 minutes. I'll remind you 30 seconds to go. And if you'd remain, that would be appreciated.
Sorry. I am speaking both as a notified neighbour, Old House, and as representing the National Conservation Committee of the Architectural Heritage Society of Scotland. I don't propose to reiterate my reasons for objecting, since they are all already clearly stated in your report, but to go back to the root cause of all this. The problem arose as a direct result of the decision taken by the sawmill now more than 15 years ago to retool with computerized machinery, including chippers for the waste wood. This business decision did not require planning permission, but quickly proved to have consequences for local amenity and infrastructure. The change had two results: a greatly increased throughput, meaning more lorries in and out down the narrow dead-end access road, and more particularly, larger lorries. Previously, waste wood was removed on flatbed trucks as bundles of slabs, but now the larger volume of chips introduced the use of articulated long wheelbase curtains lorries, and it was these that would soon begin to damage either the mill hedge or the corner of Church House. This damage then continued to worsen until the lorries had themselves widened the road by eating far enough into the hedge so that they could round the corner more easily, and that has remained the case. Most of this was already known in 2016 when the matter last appeared before this committee. At that time, it was decided that the solution proposed was not compliant with policy HE2 conservation areas, in that it did not either preserve or enhance the New Abbey conservation area, and it was refused. The scheme is now proposed is in all respects very similar, with granite boulders, concrete and tarmac, but under the heading of future-proofing is a bit more damaging, with more hedge to go and more of the inalienable crown land to be covered in tarmac to the extent of an additional 25 square metres. This change is proposed for the most attractive part of our heritage and tourist village, and is what our visitors particularly come to see and spend time in. It is an unacceptable change to this important environment, and is designed only to ease the passage of the 2 or 3 daily lorries which might cause more damage. The current application is also not compliant with policy HE2 conservation areas. It will not either preserve or enhance the conservation area, and should this be refused, should thus be refused, and a different solution be sought which does not require such expenditure from Historic Environment Scotland and such sacrifice of theirs and the public's property. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Martin. Any questions for Martin? Oh, Councillor Beretti, please.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, hi. You said 2 or 3. Is that definite, or is it less than or more than lorries?
There were 2 the day before. It's normally 2 or 3. There have been occasionally 4. And they only damage the hedge on the way in, not on the way out.
Thank you very much, Councillor Beretti. Any other questions for Martin? In that case, thank you very much for being here today, sir, and thanks for your presentation. We now have the final speaker, Dr. Cody Wyant, who is an objector and appearing in person. I'm sure you'll have heard the requirements, 3 minutes, 30 seconds ago. Remind you, and if you'd remain, I'd be grateful. Whenever you're ready, sir.
Drab and depressing. So I will give you some images of the area, and I hope that we can all agree that this area is of significant importance to New Abbey and Dumfries and Galway and the village life that we have here. Next slide. Here we have images of Church House, Abbey House, and Old House and the Corn Mill. These are the structures that we are discussing. As you can see, they are of extreme beauty. Next slide. Here we have alternative images. Next slide. Here's the corn mill in the garden. I assume prior to the accident, the garden here on the right. Next slide. Here is a better image for the board to understand and look at the HGV path as it comes up from the A710 on the left and around Church House. This gives a slightly better image to what we've had in the papers before. It gets into trouble as we turn to the right. Next slide. Here's the top of the road where the turn with Church House on the left, where we get damage, and the corn mill on the right. Next slide. Here's images from my window of when we get into trouble, and the lorries, as you can see, they're even bigger than the house. Next slide. Here are historic images from the historic Scotland Canmore site. As we can see here, the hedge is historic. It has a distinct curvature that complements the water bypass channel. It's a crucial aesthetic line that will be ruined if it is widened. The new hedge line of the proposal is not in character with this curvature and the intended landscape of this site that was given by Charles Stewart of Chambly in 1978 to HES. I also urge you to consider the fact that the maturity of this current hedge is at least 50 to 100 years or more, so it will take a long time to get to this stage. Also, as we've seen earlier from the case councillor, the photographs do show that the hedge is currently in regeneration. So if we leave what is there now, it will regenerate quickly. Next slide. Next slide. One thing we haven't considered is the wildlife. We have ducks and ducklings every spring that go between the hedge. You can hear them quacking in the nest. And also we have spawning that happens in early spring where you get a lot of frogs and toads on the road. One thing to consider, this is a common frog that I took a picture of a year or two ago. Other things to consider are species like the natterjack toad that the RSPB Mersehead say are in this area.
30 seconds to go.
Sorry?
30 seconds to go.
Oh, thank you. Those habitats are protected. I think it would be great to have some sort of study to see and examine the hedge if we have protected species in there. Next slide. And finally, the cherry tree. We can see that the cherry tree is in perfect condition as it blooms. There is no reason to cut this tree down. This tree was planted by the last miller, which is a part of the heritage of the site and a part of the narrative of the Living Museum. And for that reason, this tree should be protected and not cut down. I'll leave it there.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Any questions for Dr. Ryan, Councillor Barretti?
Yeah, thank you. On that last image there and from previous ones, the HGV vehicles are going from the right to the left in delivery or returning to the site, because I'm assuming that that road there is going to wherever this sawmill is. Is that correct?
The road as we're looking down currently, that's the A710, so we're at the top. Where we're standing right now is where the HGV will be turning. Church House would be on the left, and the Corn Mill Garden and Hedge are on the right.
Thanks, Councillor Barretti. Any other questions for Dr. White? In that case, thank you very much for coming forward, sir. Members were in session. Councillor Dryborough.
Yes, it's an interesting one, this one, isn't it? Because you're talking about heritage sites, you're talking about New Abbey, natural historical, whatever it is called nowadays. Historical Scotland has said that they're happy with the suggestion coming forward, but you know, we've got people from the local village who aren't. But we've got a planning application in front of us that, you know, tries to solve an issue that's been there for a number of years, I think. With that in mind, I believe that we should go with the recommendations in the report, Chair. Happy to be, you know, listen to other members at that.
Thank you very much, Councillor Dryborough. Councillor Slater.
Thank you, Chair. And the evidence I've seen today and heard today, I believe it's a conservation village, and I believe this should be refused today. Thank you.
So if you believe it's to be refused today, are you putting forward a proposal to refuse it, and on what grounds?
The grounds are, it's a very old village. It's got a lot of heritage. The hedge is very important as well, as the gentleman said. And I think putting boulders on the side of the road will give more problems with vehicles probably hitting them. And also I think that it's put more danger on the road, I would say. That's my proposal that it should be refused, and also because of the
Thank
heritage.
you. I'll
of
ask
the
Mr Sutty. Character, amenity and road safety might be the language that Councillor Slater's trying to use. Is that correct?
Yes, Chair. I wouldn't want to put words into Councillor Slater's mouth, but if you look on page 41 of your agenda at 1.10, you have the previous reason for refusal that the committee gave. Clearly, we're hearing from a lot of objectors that they don't consider there's been a significant change from the previously refused scheme. So I would suggest, if you are minded to go for, if there's I suppose it's an amendment, isn't it, to go, then certainly that would be the basis of it. The only change which has occurred since is that instead of saying local development plan, it would be local development plan 2, and you've also now got NPF 4 policy 7 is the relevant policy on the historic environment. If Councillor Slater wants to put other elements in, that by virtue of being a conservation area, the trees are protected within that, so I think that probably does cover that element of it. The boulders are specifically mentioned in the reason for refusal. The only other thing I've heard there is about road safety. I would advise that you've got comment on page 43 from the local roads officer of no objection, so it's whether or not there's a sustainable ground there.
I think the advice might be useful to take, Councillor Slater. It's not an amendment yet because we don't have a seconder for either Councillor Dryburgh or Councillor Slater. Councillor Barretti.
Just wondering, Chair, if this is not one of these cases where we really do need to have a site visit to look at this at the road level. I'm struggling with the boulders because any HGV driver who hits a boulder shouldn't be driving. So I would rather have a site visit to determine exactly with what I'm seeing, because I think it is extremely difficult. I also do think that the hedge is extremely important because it does actually give character to that junction or that section.
Okay, we have a proposal for a site visit. Councillor Dryburgh.
I believe we have enough information in front of us today to make the decision, Chair.
I have a proposal, enough information before us today. Who's up for a site visit and who's up for enough information today? No yet, no.
We've got Councillor Blake and Councillor Cruthers.
I now have Councillor Blake, Councillor Cruthers and Councillor Campbell. Councillor Blake, please.
Thank you. In view of the complexity of this situation, I would support a site visit. I'm quite happy to second that.
Thank you very much, Councillor Blake. Councillor Cruthers.
Councillor Blake covered my point. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Campbell.
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, I think I've got enough information. I'll second Councillor Dryburgh.
So if I have this right, the first was a motion by Councillor Barretti, seconded by Councillor Blake, and an amendment, Councillor Dryburgh, seconded by Councillor Campbell. Is that right, Tracy? And if so, take us to the vote, please.
Thanks, Chair. Councillor Cruthers and Slater, you've both got your hand raised. Are those just historic?
Yes, it is, yes. Take it down.
Yes, historic, thank
I'm just going to try and do it.
Okay.
Give me a minute, okay?
So the motion proposed by Councillor Barretti, seconded by Councillor Blake, is to defer consideration of this application to allow for a site visit to be arranged. And the amendment is proposed by Councillor Dryburgh, seconded by Councillor John Campbell, and that's to determine the application today without the need for a site visit. Proceed to the vote, Chair.
Take us to the vote, Tracy, please.
Thank you. Chair.
Amendment.
Vice Chair. Councillor Giusti. Councillor Giusti, I can see you've unmuted your microphone. If you're having trouble, could you put it in the chat, please? I'll come back to Councillor Dusty. Councillor Beretti?
Motion.
Councillor Blake?
Motion.
Councillor Campbell?
Amendment.
Councillor Crothers?
Motion.
Councillor Dashper?
Amendment.
Councillor Davis?
Amendment.
Councillor Dryborough?
Amendment.
Councillor Drysdale?
Motion.
Councillor Howie?
Motion.
Councillor Hislop?
Amendment.
Councillor Jordan?
Amendment, please.
Councillor McFarlane?
Motion.
Councillor Marshall?
Motion.
Councillor Slater?
Motion.
Councillor Thompson?
Amendment.
Councillor Walters?
Motion, please.
And Councillor Dusty, Vice Chair, has put he's voting for the amendment in the chat. And Councillor Hill is not present. And we've got inequality of votes, 9 votes to the motion, 9 votes to the amendment. Chair, would you like to exercise your right to the casting vote?
Yes, and I'll repeat the amendment.
Thanks, Chair. The amendment is carried. We will consider the application today without the site visit.
Councillor Dryborough?
I'll say what I said before, Chair, and we'll go with the recommendations within the report.
Okay. I'm looking at Councillor McFarlane.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. The reason I supported the proposal to have a site visit is because clearly there are concerns raised by the first objector in relation to the security and safety of their premises. Equally, the last speaker raised issues and demonstrated by showing us photographs of how close those vehicles come to their building. This is an issue that I don't think will be resolved by the plan that sits in front of us, and I do think that we'll have continuing ongoing issues in relation to this. So I have concerns, and I'm really mindful of the views of the objectors in relation to this.
Okay, I have Councillor Jordan. Emma, please.
Thank you, Chair. I'm happy to second the suggestion made by Councillor Dryborough to approve the proposal. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Jordan. Councillor Campbell?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Yeah, it is a difficult one, as Councillor McFarlane said. I think historic Scotland has been placed in an impossible position. I do understand that they want to protect their assets, etc. However, it's not going to alleviate the problem. It might do it short term, but the big issue is the HGVs, and there needs to be a more serious look into how that can be resolved. But I'm happy to go with the recommendations purely on the grounds of road safety, which is the main issue with the report sort of highlights, in various areas in the report. So I would support that we do recommend approval on this application. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, so far we have a motion to go with Elvis' recommendation. That's been seconded by Councillor Jordan. If there are no alternative views, I'll take it the committee have supported. Councillor Walters, please.
Yeah, I'm afraid, having listened to the objectors, I would be happy to refuse the recommendation on the grounds that were pointed out before on page 41, which is on 110, which is the grounds that we used to refuse in 2017 with the sort of amendments that Mr. Sooty suggested. So I'd be happy to put that forward as an amendment and see if there's anybody else who would like to do that. Thanks.
Thanks very much, Keith. So if you got a second, Councillor Slater.
Yes, Chair, I would second that. Thank you.
Okay, so I will ask Tracy, Oh, I take it Councillor Drysdale was wanting to second it as well, was she?
I think I was in first in the chat, Chair, and I'd like to speak if that's okay. I put in the chat about 3 minutes ago to speak, but it's up to yourself.
Well, Keith Walters has proposed and David Slater. If one of them defers, I'm happy to have your name put in the list. Otherwise, that's what goes down on public record.
I'm fine. I'm not going to get petty about it, but I think we need to state the facts with Mr. Sutty, if that's okay.
You didn't want to speak, Pauline, did you? You just wanted to support a proposal.
Well, I was speaking, and it was in the chat, which was, with all due respect to my fellow councillor, I was in there before, but it's irrelevant.
Okay, well, you carry on what you have to say, Pauline, please.
Thank you, Chair. I think we need to listen to our communities, which is often not happening these days, and I'd like to back up my two fellow councillors in that, we need to look at LDP 2 and NPF 4 Policy 7, which is very important with regards to heritage and cultural significance and historic assets. So I would support them both, or I would second it, depending on which way governance would prefer to go. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Drysdale. So I'll ask Tracy to rehearse the language used for the amendment to refuse this application. It was an amendment, wasn't it, Tracy? So can you just remind members what the language is that will be put on the report if the refusal is supported?
Thanks, Chair. So the motion was proposed by Councillor Drybrough, seconded by Councillor Jordan, to approve the application subject to the conditions in the report, and the amendment proposed by Councillor Walters, seconded by Councillor Slater, and that's to refuse the application as it's contrary to Local Development Plan 2, Policy HE2 and MPF 4 Policy 7, the terms of the Section 64 of the Planning, Listed Building and Conservation Areas Scotland Act 1997, and that the proposed alterations involving the installation of granite boulders set into concrete would not preserve or enhance the character and appearance of the New Abbey Conservation Area.
Thanks, Tracy. Can we go to the vote, please?
Chair.
Motion.
Chair, motion. Vice Chair, Councillor Giusti. I'll come back to you, Councillor Giusti, if you could put it in the chat, please. Thanks. Councillor Baretti.
Amendment.
Councillor Blake.
Amendment.
Councillor Campbell.
Motion.
Councillor Crothers.
Amendment.
Councillor Dashper.
Amendment.
Councillor Davis.
Amendment.
Councillor Drybrough.
Motion.
Councillor Drysdale.
Amendment, please.
Councillor Howie.
Amendment.
Councillor Hislop.
Amendment.
Councillor Jordan.
Motion, please.
Councillor McFarlane.
Amendment.
Councillor Marshall.
Amendment, please.
Councillor Slater.
Amendment.
Councillor Thompson.
Motion.
Councillor Walters.
Amendment, please.
And the Vice Chair has voted for the amendment. The amendment is carried 13 votes to 5. The application has been refused. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you very much, members. We move on to agenda item number 7. Planning application for siting of 27 holiday lodges / caravans for 12 months holiday use, formation of access roads and associated infrastructure and landscaping, erection of temporary sales cabin and parking area, revised layout to that previously approved under 06/P/4/0137, partial retrospective at Beatock Manor Lodge Park, Beatock. Full application reference number 22/1818/full. The recommendation is to approve subject to conditions, and Case Officer Claire Eckstein. Claire, just when you're ready, will you take us through your presentation, please?
Thank you, Chair. The application relates to Beattock Manor Lodge Park near Beattock, and it's a planning application for the siting of 27 holiday lodges caravans for 12-month holiday use, formation of access, roads and associated infrastructure and landscaping, the erection of a temporary sales cabin and parking area, and then the layout is as revised layout that was previously approved under planning application 0P40137. So just going through, the site itself lies on the east side of the C105 on the northern end of Beattock Village, adjoining the Category B listed Beattock House. So this shows the site boundary and its relationship to Beattock Manor, which is just to the northwest. So this plan shows the current application site layout with the existing site entrance, and there's two lodges, the Kestrel and Dalwhinnie Lodge within the site, whose occupancy is noted in paragraph 1.10 of the report. This shows the layout of the site as approved under 06P 40137. And then this is an aerial photograph of the current site with the previous 2006 application and the various properties surrounding it, with the Osprey to the north, the Beattock Manor to the east, northeast, and then the land to the south of the area identified for housing under policy BTHT 202 and 203. I've also identified where the Kestrel and a Dalwhinnie Lodge is as well. So this just shows a typical lodge unit with the single and twin units. The single units would be on the northern part of the site, with the twin units on the southern part of the site. This shows the sales site office, which, as noted in the report, will be conditioned for a temporary period of 5 years. And here I have a sectional detail. This is to Beattock Manor, and these relate to the units for the lodges 3, 4 and 5, which you will note within the report there are no openings proposed on the rear elevations of these lodges that face over Beattock Manor. What I've done is given a site frontage. This is actually a slightly older street view photograph, because it does provide a sort of clearer view than my own photographs, which were taken on a rather wet day. But it shows you where the sort of front wall is, and the verge on that side of the C105 and the site entrance. And again, another street view photograph just showing it looking northwards, with the site entrance highlighted in red. And this is actually a close-up of the site entrance, and I've also indicated where there will be a proposed crossing point to the pavement opposite. So there won't be any footway along this side of on the left-hand side of the road. It'll be just connecting into the right-hand side where the pavement goes into southwards into the village. So this is at the site entrance on this rather wet day, and we've got you've got the site entrance gates with the existing sales office and the Kestrel, which is the unit on the left. And then this is just panning left from the previous photograph, with the Kestrel in the foreground, and then Dalwhinnie Lodge is to the left. There's also another unit in the middle, which is just used for holiday use. So these are the other existing sited units. We've obviously got Dalwhinnie Lodge on the right, and sort of other units just on the site. But you'll be able to work out when you look at the distant photographs. So this is actually looking from the turning area on the eastern boundary, which is looking across towards Beatwick Manor. And then this is just panning right from the previous photograph. So we're looking at Beatwick Manor and the former southern boundary of the 2006 application. And turn it panning right again, so you can see the existing lodges, which is towards the site entrance and along the southern boundary. And then this is panning right from the previous photograph, looking across the northern part of the site, with the east boundary and Beatwick Manor to the left of the photograph. And then that would have taken you back to the original photograph that I took at the start. So this is the northern half of the site. So this is actually north of the site entrance, with the existing sales office shown. And again, this is the northern half of the site, with you can see Beatwick Manor just in the centre of the photograph, with the roof of that in the background. And then this is just looking towards the northern boundary of the site, where there's some existing buildings. Again, just to give you an impression within the site itself. And then this is actually looking towards the northern part of the site, towards the site entrance and the existing site sited units. So the report actually sets out the main issues relating to the proposal. And as noted, the application is now for the siting of 27 lodges caravans on this site. And it was confirmed by the applicant that all these units will be for holiday use only, with no residential element. So the principle of development, as set out in the report in paragraph 4.5, is relating to tourism policies in policy E9 and the NPF policy, which is supportive of tourism development relating to the redevelopment of an existing site. Which would involve the increase from 16 approved units to 27 units, with the smaller units, i.e. the single units, on the northern part of the site. In terms of servicing of the development, as noted in paragraph 1.7, there are existing services already in place with capacity for this number of units, and lighting will be of a bollard type. The layout has been adjusted to take account of existing trees. And again, as I pointed out in the photographs, the plots overlooking Beatwick Manor will have no openings on the rear, and additional landscaping is proposed. In terms of the increased numbers, the roads accept the entrance for the holiday units, with condition 4 noting a landing point and a pedestrian crossing point being proposed, which we would do on the 16th unit in line with the previous permission, so it doesn't occur at the end of the development. So on this basis, it is considered that the proposed holiday park accords with policies, and the recommendation is to approve subject to conditions noted.
Thank you very much, Claire. Questions for our case officer? Councillor Driver, please.
Yeah, just two questions, Claire, on the actual application itself. It says for 12-month use. Something comes in the back of my mind that it's only 11 months out of the 12. That might be something to do with caravans as opposed to, I suppose, but if you can clarify that particular point. And then on the lighting side of things, obviously Moffat is a dark sky town, which is next to BTEC, and I'm just wondering if we can put a condition to have, I know it's bollard type, you said, lights, but it's making sure that the light doesn't reflect up the way.
Claire, I'm sure we can add a condition if members are wishful of that, if we agree eventually to accept the proposal, But Claire, can you respond, please?
The application is, well, they've applied for a 12-month occupancy condition. It is for holiday use only. If it had been for residential use, then we would be looking at it in a totally different planning policies, i.e. for housing. We had a discussion from the start that they knew that it was contrary to policy if they went for residential units on the site. And that's the position that we've taken, that is that we would accept a holiday use because it's tourism, but not residential use.
Thanks very much, Claire. I have Councillor Beretti, Thompson and Walters to speak, please. So Beretti and then Thompson, then Walters. Councillor Beretti, please.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. It was just to go back to a point that Councillor Driver picked up on, and I picked up on bollard type. Now, exactly what that is, because could be anything. Describe it, please.
I understand bollard type lighting is bollards up to about this point here. But if you wish to have and that's normally just on these sites to show where the sort of roadway is, for people sort of driving or walking, and they would just cover that area. But if you wish a condition for us to fully confirm that and the exact heights and whatever, then if it is approved, then we could impose that.
Thank you, Chair.
Thanks very much, Councillor Beretti. Councillor Stephen Thompson, please.
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, so there's a few things in this one that I find pretty difficult to square. I think just going to, you mentioned paragraph 1.10 on page 55, just to do with the occupancy, and I'm conscious that you've got two properties, existing properties, that are effectively permanent residences for two households. We're not in the business of making people homeless by dint of the swipe of a pen, if you like. So I'm just concerned that there has been conditions for the previous application here for 06P40137, further up the page. And I think we had a discussion earlier about what conditions were reasonable. So that being necessary, precise, enforceable, reasonable in all other respects. It strikes me that since 2006, there's been a condition agreed that none of the chalets should be for the sole use of an occupant as a main residence, and yet, as an authority, we've not enforced that to the point where, for a number of years, you've got permanent residents with council tax payers here, and I know we don't decide council tax here, but I don't want to. I certainly wouldn't be happy making a decision that made people potentially homeless. And the other thing is that at 1.10, it mentions that the agent has confirmed the issue will be addressed separately, but it strikes me that this is one of our conditions that we as a planning enforcement authority should be kind of addressing, not just separately, but retrospectively, if it's to mean anything at all. So is there anything you can add to that, just in terms of what the implications of this decision would be? Because I'm concerned about that condition being enforced, if indeed it ever could be enforced, because we've not got a history of enforcing it to date. So is it reasonable in that respect? Thanks, Chair.
Thanks, Stephen. David's offered to respond to some of the matters. So David, please.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, thank you for your question, Councillor Thompson. As you know, we've had a few email correspondence on exactly this matter separately. The concern here, obviously, is the fact that the original approval was as a holiday use only, and it was considered on that basis. It was looked at in terms of policy on that basis, but unfortunately there does appear to have been 2 units which have been put on site and aren't in compliance with that. Now, that is a matter which is still a live matter with the planning enforcement team, and certainly back in I think it was February, the agent specifically asked if, I'll try and find the wording for you, it was, can I suggest that the status of Dalwhinnie and Kestrel lodges be put on one side? My clients will liaise with you about what needs to be done to regularise the status of these two lodges. So that isn't part of what's before members today. What has been applied for is all of them being purely for the holiday use. So that would be a fallback position in the event that permission wasn't granted for a separate retrospective application to deal with it. At this stage, we're certainly not looking at serving any enforcement notices requiring people to get out of their properties or anything like that. In the first instance, as set out in our council enforcement charter, we would try and allow the opportunity to regularise it. So I would think what is likely to come forward is an application for those two units to be used for a permanent residential use, and that would be something which would almost certainly end up before the committee for you to allow that to be considered. But that is for another day. It's not what's actually before members just now. All that's being proposed is, as I say, it's the fallback position of everything on the site being purely for holiday use. And to answer Councillor Dryburgh's question, it would be for 12 months. So in other words, all year round, it could be used for holiday purposes. There's no planning restriction on things being closed down for so many months, although it is quite a common thing for caravan sites to actually close down for a few months over the winter season when things are quieter. But happy to answer any other questions that you might have.
Thanks very much, Stephen.
Can I quickly come back on that, Chair?
No problem. Come back, Stephen Thompson, please.
Yeah, thanks, Chair, and thanks for that answer, David. And I think that's helpful to know that there is a route to, avoiding the worst case scenario. So I think I was kind of going to ask just on that. So we're not in session yet, obviously, but the application as it is, and in terms of like if there were to be conditions, which there are, that precision in the condition. Would it be open to us to be able to specify that Kestrel and Dalwhinnie were effectively not to be made? I'm just sort of conscious of ED9 where there's a presumption against tourism accommodation being used as permanent, but here we are, and they effectively are being used as permanent, and we would effectively, by this decision, be changing them to tourism. So I think there is a wee bit of a conflict there in my mind about that. Is that something that could be conditioned precisely today with those two specific residences, or, as you were saying earlier, would it have to be the basis of a specific and separate application? Thank you.
Thanks, Stephen. I'll ask David just to come back again, then I'll move on to Councillor Walters.
Certainly my advice is, as I gave earlier for the other application, it's going to be considered what's before us. What is before us is for these all to be used as holiday lodges, notwithstanding the fact that there are these two at the moment that would appear not to be being used in accordance with the original condition. We are only considering these for holiday purposes, and I think it would be simpler and a cleaner process for a separate application to come in and that to be considered on its own merits. There is the interesting situation, although this is a caravan holiday lodge site, it does sit within Beatwick settlement boundary. So it's not like it's an open countryside, which is where there's a far greater requirement for caravans and lodges not to be used for residential purposes. So that there maybe is a situation where a retrospective application, notwithstanding policy ED9 and the requirements in that, may be considered favourably, but I don't want to say any more than that at the moment. But it is slightly unusual that this actually sits within a settlement boundary.
Thanks, Councillor Thompson. And we're still on questions for our case officer. Keith Walters, please.
Just the thing about the boundary treatments and the trees. I see that it says the existing trees are noted as remaining on the boundary treatments, and there's a suggestion that in the suggested conditions that there's going to be a planting, a further landscaping scheme. But does that mean that the trees in the centre of the plot are actually going to be cut down, or are they going to be preserved as well? That's the question. Thanks.
Thanks, Councillor Walters. Claire?
The layout that I think is on, if I can go back, the layout of the caravans on that northern part of the site, which I think is probably the area that you're showing, has been done so that the impact on trees, like they've been moved slightly, so the impact on the trees, because you can see the trees marked on there, so that they're not impacted by the development. So the intention is to slot the units in in sort of beside the trees and use the trees as a means of landscaping, and then add to the landscaping to the site. I hope that answers your query.
Thanks, Claire. Thanks, Councillor Walters. If there are no other questions for our case officer, or Lynn Davis, please. Councillor Davis, and then Councillor Drysdale.
Thanks, Chair.
Councillor Drysdale's first.
Oh, sorry, it's fine.
I'm definitely down the pecking order today. It's fine. Could I just, thanks Claire for the report, could I just ask yourself or Mr Sutty what the principles are for open space and amenity on page 59, 4.10 members? You know, we've obviously got an application in for quite a high number of caravans. Is it just down to the values and principles of an applicant to decide on that with regards to caravan parks, so it's different to a housing development itself? Thank you, Claire.
Yep, caravan parks have their own licensing procedure, and that ultimately sets out the distances between caravans, and that's set by the caravan license, which, if it was a residential property, we would probably deem as unacceptable. But because they're caravans, it dates back to legislation dating back to 1960, and we have to, you know, they follow the license. It's different from a housing development. The same would be for, you know, open space, where we would expect for a residential development to have specific open space. We can't ask for that, and you know, we see development that caravan sites do get closer and closer together. The units.
Thank you. Thanks, Chair.
Thanks, Councillor Drysdale. Councillor Davis.
I think my question's kind of been answered, but basically on page 55, referring to paragraph 1.8 on page 55, when it states that a previous application on the 3rd of November 2005 was refused for 20 timber holiday lodges. Now, it's brought to my knowledge that no extra land has been added to the site, and it's still the same square meterage. So I'm wondering how we can approve an application for 7 more units than was previous on the previous application of 2005, and how we can recommend that for approval today.
Claire, please.
We're looking at the application in 2005 was considered against different planning policies, and we're now looking against the current local development plan and the NPF 4. So that's the recommendation. The policies have changed since 2005. We're now just considering the application against those, hence the recommendation.
Thanks for that, Claire.
Thanks, Councillor Davis. Councillor McFarlane, please.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. And it's probably a question for Mr Sutty in relation to the enforcement. Similar to Councillor Thompson, I'm a bit concerned in relation to the people who find themselves in the situation whereby they're in a residence that perhaps hasn't got planning approval, and they're going to have to go through another process. But I'm wondering, the planning permission was given to a developer previously, and are we in a situation whereby we would be able to take enforcement action against the developer in relation to the actions that they've taken, i.e. selling on the properties, and how do we safeguard against that in this development, this application? Thank you.
Claire? David.
If you serve an enforcement notice, one of the first things you have to do is serve what's called a Section 272 notice, which is to establish all the interests and ownerships. And you are legally obliged to serve the notice on all parties with an interest. In this instance here, if people own those 2 lodges, then the notice would be primarily served on them. So unfortunately, I don't know if Laura wants to add anything on that, but it's a due diligence exercise that when somebody purchases a property, then they are expected to check of any restrictions on that. But there, as the purchaser, it's the notice will be served on them. And there's no real comeback on the developer, unfortunately.
Thanks, Councillor McFarlane. If there are no further questions from our case officer, we'll move on to representatives. We have a representation from Derek and Suzanne Pollock, which is a statement to be read out by our governance officer, Tracy.
Thanks, Chair. Yes, from Derek and Suzanne Pollock, objectors. We, the owners of Beatock House, referred to on the plan as Manor House, have the following concerns and queries over the application. 1. The original application for 20 lodges, reference 05P 40493, was refused on the 3rd of November 2005. A resubmission for 16 was granted on the 6th of July 2006 under reference 6P 40137. Why now is it okay to have 27 lodges on the site of the same footprint? 2. The boundary of the park to the north-east is wrong. Attached is the final plan of the land we bought in December 2020. There are pegs in the ground at the top of the slope, tight to the turning head, which is not reflected in the application plan and estimate of where the boundary should be. 3. Lodges 4 and 5 overlook the house and potentially block light into the kitchen, and due to the elevation of the lodge park, look into bedrooms. 4. What provision is there to stop people or their dogs from the lodge holiday park wandering into the private gardens of Beatock House? And we would like these to be addressed or taken into consideration before approval. Thanks.
Thanks, Tracy. Members will note that representation. We now have Cameron Purdy, the applicant or the agent, in person. Cameron, you'd like to come forward, please? You'll have the same 3 minutes to make your presentation. I'll remind you 30 seconds to go to draw it to a conclusion. And if you'd wait in case members have questions for you, I'd be grateful. And just whenever you're ready, sir.
Thank you. Convener, councillors, thank you for this opportunity to make a short supporting statement on behalf of the applicant. My name is Cameron Purdy from Architecture for You, the agent for this application. The site was granted planning permission in 2006, so it has been designated for lodge park use for some 18 years. Unfortunately, progress to developing the site has been slow. The planning application being considered today is simply a variation from the original approved layout, varying the distribution, size, position and number of lodges to reflect changing commercial requirements and constraints since 2006. The site has lain underutilised for too long, and the applicant seeks to complete the development site with a modern, tidy, well laid out facility in a sensitive setting and increasing the benefits to the local community, including employment opportunities, material and contractor supplies for development and maintenance, as well as enhanced tourism provision. The applicant hopes that this new initiative to complete the development to a fully operational status will enhance the appearance of this site. At every stage, the applicant has confirmed their expressed desire to work with the planning officers to reach a balanced and acceptable solution for the site, agreeing significant compromises and adjustments to achieve a well-considered proposal for this committee's consideration. Concerns raised have been constructively discussed in detail with the planning officers involved to ensure that the site is well screened by trees, shrubs, walling and fencing, and constrained insofar as it sits at a much higher level from the manor house and does not unbalance the listed or historic setting. In particular, the applicant believes that the development will support a rural economy and community with the introduction of a significant tourist facility, protect and enhance the natural and historic environment by enlivening an underutilised and largely ignored site.
You have 30 seconds to go.
Provide BETUC with local business growth and employment, create a sustainable environment and access to high quality recreation. Endorse the aims and objectives of the Moffat and BETUC Community Action Plan. With respect, I would ask that the committee endorse the view of the Planning Department to approve the application. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your presentation. Any questions? Councillor Driver, please.
Yeah, thanks very much for your presentation. There was a question earlier on I mentioned about bollard type lighting because of the Moffat dark sky situation. I'm just wondering if you could advise the committee what type of lighting that is in regard bollard type. And Claire said it was one of those ones that you sit in about this high with some lighting on to allow you to go around the park. Would an alternative be a problem to the applicant if it was a dowelled one from the top, if you know what I mean, which light doesn't shine up the way?
Sorry, I think the idea of the lower level bollard type lighting is a sensible option for the site. And I don't consider that there is any requirement for those higher level lightings. It's not something that in the setting we have, where the pathway around the site is pretty stable, that would provide, I think, good access both for cars and for people in the site. I don't see any requirement for anything beyond bollard lighting.
Come back here. So this is the Planning Applications Committee, and what you're suggesting, you know, may be appropriate to the planning application. What I'm suggesting is, if there was an alternative type of lighting suggested by the committee, would that cause the applicant a problem? Not you, the applicant.
Yeah, I don't think it would. I don't think if there was consultation with the local groups regarding lighting that was very appropriate for the dark sky area, then I think the client, my client, would be amenable to that.
Thanks very much. Thanks very much, Councillor Drybrough. I have Councillor Stephen Thompson, please.
Thanks, Chair, and thanks, Cameron, for your presentation. So it's just a couple of questions around the you know, I suppose working with the planning authority, etc. But one of my questions related to the two permanent residences that are currently there, Dalwhinnie and Kestrel lodges. And the original application, as you're probably aware, in 2022 asked for, I think, 27 lodges with 14 being permanent. And that was subsequently changed in, I think, March this year, so a couple of months ago, to all 27 to be for holiday purposes, 12-month holiday cabins, notwithstanding the fact that two were already and have been for many years permanent dwellings. So I think, you know, to be fair, the Community Council were reconsulted about this because it had changed, the application had changed materially. And as you maybe heard earlier from David Sutty, there would be a future opportunity to, I suppose, come forward with another application, maybe to deal separately with the two permanent dwellings. I'm just wondering why, given that you changed the application, or the application was changed in March and republished then, why that couldn't have been done to recognise the two particular permanent dwellings of this council taxpayer. So it was really just to see if you could add anything to that. Thank you.
The original submission understood that those two particular units were residential. But as I met on site with the planning officer, there seemed to be some doubt as to their status. And what we felt then at the site meeting was that is a separate matter that can be dealt with outside of this application, and the applicant here would make a separate application as required in order to regularise or confirm an acceptable status for those two units. But that was only something that came out in February of this year when we had the site meeting. So prior to that, I certainly wasn't aware of any issue with those two particular units. But the applicant has made it clear that they are quite happy to accept 27 holiday let lodges or caravans on the site on this application, and as is suggested, meet up with planning and resolve the issue, if there is an issue, with those other units that are being queried. And the applicant is perfectly happy to do that.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks very much, Councillor Thompson. I don't think there are any other questions for the presenter today, the representative. So thank you very much, sir, for coming forward. Members were in session. Councillor Baretti, then Councillor Ryborough.
Yeah, it's to pick up a point that both myself and Councillor Dryber have picked up on. That is the lighting. Particular interest in this because I'm an astronomer. So therefore, I would not want to see certain types of lighting because light scatter and light density is highly particular to the area and the vegetation and the surrounding constructions that are there, because they will bounce light back up into the sky. So I would certainly want to see conditions based on the lighting and the wattage of the lighting, so as not to make it too high. If it's purely for illumination of the pathway, then an acceptable wattage or lighting source should be judged by the officers.
If that's Councillor Dryborough's only issue, I would hope that we would delegate that arrangement to our case officer to liaise with the applicant and find a suitable type of lighting, not the bollard type that's proposed. So, Councillor Dryborough?
I believe in the past we've had a certain condition with regards to that type of lighting agreed with the local authority planning officers and things like that, so I'm happy to go with that, Chair. I've got more interest in this because I'm a space cadet rather than an astronomist.
So it would appear we're happy. Oh, Councillor Hislop?
Chair, it's just on the lighting condition. If the actual bollard type doesn't have the effect of going upwards and lighting up the sky, would they not be acceptable as well? And can't we just leave it to the officer to make sure that the lighting that is supplied, whether it's a pole with lighting down the way or the bollard type, that it's actually suitable for the dark skies environment, rather than specifying that we don't want the bollard type, if the bollard type could work?
Thanks, Councillor. I think that was the kind of agreement. The applicant's agent said quite clearly he didn't fancy lamp posts with downlighting, and Councillor Dryborough has acknowledged that we leave that to our case officer, and Claire will liaise with the applicant. And if it turns out that bollards are the most suitable for the benefit of the users, the holiday park clients, then that's what Claire will presumably agree to. Councillor Thompson, please.
Yeah, thanks again, Chair. So I've heard some assurances today, but ultimately what we're considering is the written report in front of us. And I'm still uncomfortable that, notwithstanding that there could be a further future application, in one sense, all we're agreeing today is a mechanism that clarifies the route by which two households could be made homeless. So I'm not sure what how I would couch that in a planning term, but I can't agree with this as it is, although I do take comfort from some assurances that something might come back to us to regularise this. So I'm not sure how best to, maybe it's just a case of recording dissent, because I don't know if I can give a planning reason for refusing this other than I don't think the conditions are enforceable, because there's no evidence to suggest that over the last 18 years that they have been. So I'm in your hands in a sense, and would welcome any guidance from the planning officer if there's an even planning reason for that. Otherwise, I'll just record my dissent. Thank you.
Do you want to make any comments on Stephen's presentation there, David?
Well, basically, if Councillor Thompson is unhappy with the recommendation, he has the option of either going against the recommendation for putting it for refusal, or to strike condition 2. But obviously, if it's struck entirely, you'd be talking about the entire development being not restricted in any shape or form, which I would suggest that if you're putting forward a motion to change it, it really ought to be along the lines of with the exception of, and then list the 2 which are there. But that, again, as I've said earlier today, that is not the application that's actually before us today that's being considered. So I would be far more comfortable with that being considered on its own merits as a freestanding application. And we've heard from the agent today that they're willing to go down that route, which I think is the simpler and fairer way of doing it.
Councillor Thompson, do you want to come back in? Are you content with that advice?
I think just about, and I am hearing the sort of positive noises, but equally these are not what's in front of us. These are to be confirmed, and I think at the moment this effectively, if there is a way to, and that's why I asked earlier, if I did specify as a change to that condition that Kestrel and Dalwhinnie were to be excluded from that, would that be competent, even though it isn't as simple? Because otherwise I would be happy to make that as an alternative recommendation or an alternative way forward. But if it's not competent, and I'm not sure if that's actually what you're saying, it's just maybe not as simple, then I'll happily put that forward.
Thanks for that, Councillor Thompson. And I hope we're not going to get hung up on 2 units that don't form part of this application. But I'll ask Laura to give you some advice and guidance. Laura Whitelaw is our legal advisor. Laura, please.
Thank you, Chair. My concern about carving out the 2 units that you've stated is that then would be the planning permission attached to that land for all time coming. And if what you're trying to do is to protect the current residents of the property, then you may be going beyond what your current intention is by trying to change the planning permission for the land.
Thank you. I presume, Councillor Thompson, although you haven't made a proposal yet, and I appreciate that, if you do and you don't get a seconder, you can certainly record your dissent, and that would be part of the public record. But I'll leave that in your hands, Councillor Thompson, because I think you're the only speaker that remains, and then I think we have a proposal to go forward by Councillor Driver and Beretti, provided the lighting situation is explored by our case officer in partnership with the applicant and the applicant's agent. So you Councillor Thompson, a proposal, or acknowledge that what we're doing is in line with what's before us, and the other units will be addressed at a future date.
I think I'll just record my dissent, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. So, Tracy, Governance Officer, please.
Sorry.
You go to put in a proposal first and they'll get a second, and then you get a second.
My issue is...
Sorry, there's a point of clarity then. He's recorded dissent on what? Because there's only been a proposal come forward to accept the recommendation as is, with the exception of discussing the lighting situation.
I already explained to Councillor Thompson, if he puts up a proposal and doesn't get a seconder, he can then record his dissent. He just needs to put up a proposal to refuse it on the basis of, and then if he doesn't get a seconder, he can record his dissent, and that'll be a matter of public record. But I've already explained that to him. Councillor Thompson?
Yeah, so thanks, Chair. I'll go through you if that's okay. The reason why I'd asked about the naming the two individual chalets was because I think we'd heard already that we would hope that that would come back as a future application. I think it could have been done for this application, but it wasn't. I've asked if they could be specified as an alteration to that condition. I've had some advice about that, but neither that said that I couldn't do that, just that it would make it more complicated. So I think I'll put forward then that those two are identified as part of that condition to be more precise about what's excluded from it. And if that's competent, even if not ideal, I'll move that. And then if I don't get seconded, I'll record my dissent. Would that work?
It'll work provided it's a competent emotion, yes. David, you want to help Stephen?
I would have concerns about it, as expressed by Laura before, about it sort of, it's not what's actually before us today, but I don't know if Laura wants to comment as to whether it's competent to actually do that. It's one thing for me to have reservations about it, but I'm not at the moment ruling it as an incompetent motion.
Okay, Laura.
Can I ask, can you repeat what it is that you'd like to change and also the planning basis for that, please?
Stephen, can you repeat what you proposed?
Yeah, so in the condition, let's get.
Yes, if I can help, it's condition 2, which is
yes,
on
page
page 60. Yes, so as I understood it, you'd be saying that none of the Holiday Lodge caravans hereby granted planning permission, with the exception of Dalwhinnie Lodge and the Kestrel, and then as the rest of the condition.
Yeah, and if there's a planning reason for that, then I think that's where it gets tricky, which is why I've been asking, because it might relate to ED9, because currently they are permanent residences, and then there's a presumption against tourism accommodation being used for permanent residents, but they are already permanent residences. So I think this is where I was trying to find the right policy on which to hook it, because there's the extant situation now, and there's what we might be, I suppose, how to recognise that. So again,
okay, David, come back in because you didn't want to dig a hole for everybody, Stephen. David.
Chair, it might be an extant situation, but in planning terms, it's not an authorised extant situation. So effectively what you'd be doing is trying to authorise something that is unauthorised but has never been applied for to authorise it. So that's why I think I'm struggling in terms of with it being a competent condition, because you're actually trying to solve a problem that isn't part of this application.
Yeah, and that's why I just went straight for dissent. So if I can do that, then that's fine. So if the committee or the chair is happy for me to do that, notwithstanding the sort of nature of the situation, I'll just do that because it's probably simpler. That's okay. Thanks.
Right. Okay, that governance, please.
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, I was going to come in before. In Standing Orders 10.2.11, the mover of the motion or amendment which is not seconded may have their dissent to the decision of the council recorded in the minute. But I'm happy on this occasion, if you're okay with that, Councillor Thompson, is to note that your motion or your amendment, sorry, in this case, was deemed not competent. If that would be satisfactory, then I'll record it in the minute as a dissent.
Happy with that,
that's
Stephen?
the best way forward. Yep, thank you.
Thank you. Okay. So I'm saying it's not competent. So we have a motion and a seconder to approve this application. There was another proposal that I deemed not competent, and that'll be recorded in the minute. Members, I think it's gone 1 o'clock and we have BSL interpreters working for us. So it's 3 minutes past 1. We'll reconvene at 1:30 for the remainder of the agenda. There are no speakers registered for agenda item 8. Tracy?
Sorry, Chair, just before we conclude, can I just confirm the decision of the committee was to approve, subject to the conditions detailed in the report, with the additional condition for suitable lighting appropriate for the site and the dark skies to be compliant?
Members have agreed. Okay, thanks very much, folks. We'll see you again at 1:30. Thank you. Good afternoon, members. Welcome back. We move on to agenda item number 8, an application for the change of use of agricultural land to domestic garden ground, extension to existing domestic outbuilding, repositioning of vehicular access onto B7076, and installation of sewage treatment plant, partial retrospective, at Clarence Cottage, Topping Head, Kirkpatrick Fleming. It's a full application, reference number 24/0162/full, and the recommendation is approved subject to conditions, and our case officer is Jamie Mackenzie. Jamie, will you take us through your presentation, please?
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, well. So yeah, just as the Chair alluded to there, it's a partially retrospective one. You'll see from the photographs that I've taken from the site visit how far along the proposal is. I'll just flick along here and try and explain it where I can. Here's the location plan. As it said as well in the proposal, it involves a change of use of agricultural land to domestic garden ground. So the location plan will show the extent of that as well. So here's how a kind of rough indication of it existing, and then here's a block plan existing, should I say, with showing the site there, and then I'll click to the next one to show the proposed. So that's how it is intended to look, and you can see the garage there as well, which is part of the proposal, just to the rear of the dwelling house. That's a close-up of the garage, and it kind of indicates where the proposed sewage treatment plant is as well, just to the rear of that. Here's how the garage looks as existing, and the next one shows the proposed garage. Elevations and floor plan there. Here's the proposed access with the proposed gate and boundary treatment as well there. So here's the photos from when I went out on the site visit. You can kind of see there the reason the works are partially retrospective is for a few different aspects of already having began, and there's the garage there kind of partially started. Here's the garage from the east, or facing the east. Here's the garage at the rear. Here's the garage to the west. Here's the site entrance where the access would be formed, and you can kind of see as well in the background that's kind of where the garden ground would be extended as well. Here's a kind of close-up of the proposed garden ground area. That's kind of the view from the sort of roughly where the access is and looking out on the other side of the road towards the southeast. There's the other side of the road, and you can see the dwelling house there as well. And that's it.
Thank you, Jamie. Questions for our case officer, members? Can you see who might be? Maybe. Councillor Slater, please.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you very much for the report. But is this appears to be retrospective? Am I correct saying that? Part of the building's already started?
Yeah, and it says that in your papers, David, as well.
Okay. Just.
So you just asked if it's retrospective. It's partially retrospective, but Jamie will tell you.
Yeah, thanks. This one, I think it was an enforcement case initially, and so the applications come in as the works have already began. It involved the access. I think the works have already started on the access, and obviously you can see from the site photos there as well, the garage has also partially began works as well. So as far as I'm aware, the work stopped when the planning application came in. So that's what makes it partially retrospective.
Thanks, Jamie. Thanks very much, David. Councillor Barretti.
Thank you, Chair. Jamie, just on page 68, and looking at the drawings, it is close to a historic site of a Roman fort or Roman encampment, possibly. And on page 68 on 49, it says council archaeologist. Does that mean that at some point they are potentially thinking of excavating some of this area for archaeological finds?
Jamie?
Thanks, yeah. Well, the archaeologists looked at it, and since it's partially retrospective, there's, I think from the archaeologists' consultation response, there might have already involved some sort of downcutting works in the site where it involving with the change of use of the agricultural land to garden ground. But the archaeologist has recommended a condition for, just looking at it again here, no development shall take place until a programme of archaeological works, including a scheme of investigation, has been submitted to and approved in writing. So that kind of covers that in terms of the works going on at the application site. From if they do start to resume the works again, that kind of covers that to protect any sort of archaeological finds in the area, sort of thing.
Thanks, Jamie. Thanks. Councillor Brady. If there are no other questions for our case officer, we have no registered speakers. Members were in session. Councillor Campbell.
Yeah, I'm happy to go with the recommendations approved subject to conditions, Chair.
Councillor McFarlane has seconded that, and Councillor Brett has endorsed his approval as well. So, unless there's an alternative view, it's a unanimous decision of the committee. Can you confirm the decision, Tracy, please?
Chair, members have agreed to approve the application subject to the conditions detailed in the report.
Thank you. Agenda item number 9, application for the removal of 2 freestanding medieval crosses at Minigaff Parish Church, Cumloden Road, Newton Stewart. This is an application for listed building consent, reference number 24/0642/LBC. The recommendation is to approve unconditionally, and the case officer is Jamie Mackenzie again. Jamie, will you take us through this presentation, please? David, you've still got your hand up.
Thanks, Chair. So yeah, this one's for listed building consent for the removal of 2 freestanding medieval crosses. I'll just point out that the reason that listed building consent is required for this one is because these medieval crosses are in the list, the Historic Environment Scotland listing, they're mentioned in that. So that's kind of the reason why listed building consent is needed, but you'll see kind of the thing, the gist of it. This is at Minigaff Church as well. There's the location plan. Here's the floor plan of the site and where the stones are currently located, just in there. Here's how they look. Here's the first one. Here's the second one. Here's them together. And I've just kind of added a removal method here just so you can kind of roughly see how they would be taken down, removed. Just kind of extra photos to it. Yeah, there's that one.
Brief and to the point, Jamie. Any questions? Councillor Barretti.
Yeah, having lived in Newton Stewart, having still living in Newton Stewart, having seen these, what is actually going to happen to them now that they're being removed? Because
they're going to Stranraer Museum. It says it in your paper.
I missed that bit. I didn't get as far as Stranraer. But no, that's fine, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Barretti. Councillor Walters, please.
Actually, that was partly my question as to, is there nowhere closer that they could be held rather than taking them to Stranraer? Because presumably they're part of the culture of Minigaff and Newton Stewart. It seems strange to remove them and take them to Stranraer. Is there nowhere in Newton Stewart that could be proposed for them to be kept?
Well, again, it's not for us to decide. That's not part of the application. It's just the removal of the stone, and that happens to be an information of where they're going. But I would presume that we would want to keep them in a secure environment where members of the public could go and view them. And if somebody in Newton Stewart, some organisation or some local community group want to preserve them for their own community, I would guess an approach to the council would be welcomed, because I'm sure the council is more than happy to ensure that our history and heritage is protected and left where it should be. I'm a great believer in items, artefacts being left where they belong or displayed where they belong rather than taken to a central point. But that's, I would suggest, for another day, Councillor Walters. But it's certainly something that the council would support if there was an application from someone in Newton Stewart for these artefacts. But I have Jamie's support act here. Councillor Case Officer or Planning Officer Chris McTeer.
Thanks very much, Chair. Just to provide a bit more context to this one, I had a chat with the council archaeologist the other day just about this one. So the stones are going to the museum in Newton Stewart in the interim. They will be there until November, when the museum closes for the season, and after that they're moving to Stranraer, where they can be properly catalogued and assessed by a conservationist, and then added to the museum's collection that form part of the historic environment record. And then after that, it's up to the museum service to decide where they go after that. So just a little bit of extra context for that.
Well done, Mr. McTeer, that's really helpful. John Campbell, we're still in questions for Case Officer.
I'll wait until we get in session.
If there are no other questions for our Case Officer, Councillor Campbell.
Happy to go with the recommendations, Chair.
Councillor McFarlane seconded it. Councillor Brettis supported it as well. If there are no alternative views, Tracy, decision of the committee, please.
Members have approved the application unconditionally.
Thank you. Move on to agenda item 10. It's a section 37 decision for information and noting only. It's a consultation by Scottish Government regarding the application made on Section 37 of the Electricity Act 1989 for 9.3 kilometres of 132 kV overhead line between the new substation at Glenmucklock and the existing station at Glenglass to Glenglass Mucklock Reinforcement Project Sanctuary. This was sent to us for a consultation, and then Scottish ministers decided to determine it without a public inquiry. I did raise concerns with Mr Sutty and with Laura Whitelaw because I felt that as a council, as a planning authority, we were being, for want of a better word, ignored. And I did ask for some further investigative work to be carried out. And I'll ask Laura, I think, be the best person, or David, to tell us what happened and why, despite our making a submission, it was deemed as late and determination made without a public inquiry being convened. David, please, and then Laura. Defer to Laura. Laura.
Thank you, Chair. Legal Services were asked to look at the decision with a view to seeing if there was any possibility of raising a challenge. As you'll note, if you've had a look at the decision, it does indicate at the end of it that challenge would be by way of judicial review. For judicial review to be successful, you have to be able to fit it into one of the established grounds. There's quite limited grounds available to you to make a challenge to a public authority. After looking at it, the view of Legal Services was that the only potential, and I say potential, ground would be on the basis of legitimate expectations, that there was a legitimate expectation that there would have been a public inquiry held. However, on looking at the chain of emails that had passed between the Council and Scottish ministers, it's felt by Legal Services that there would not be any prospects of success on that ground. To be able to be successful in legitimate expectations, you have to be able to show that really, I suppose, as the name suggests, that you had an expectation of something happening and that was well founded. The DPEA, in their initial correspondence with the Council, were quite clear that the Council had 2 months within which to notify them of their objection or ask for an extension on that. It is only if you notify them of your objection within that 2-month window that you will automatically trigger a public local inquiry. For whatever reason, there was not a request for an extension. And so the 2 months passed without the objection going in. Now, the DPEA had indicated that they were still interested in receiving the council's response. I think there's maybe been a misunderstanding as to the implications of their emails, but at no time did they say that this was going to be an extension to that 2-month window. And in fact, it wouldn't have been for them to unilaterally offer an extension. It has to be agreed by the developer as well. So at best, I think there's maybe been a misunderstanding with the DPA as to whether or not the council was still within that period of getting an automatic trigger for a PLI. They still wanted to have the response in. The response was sent in. And if you look at their decision, they've been quite careful to point out that they have considered Dumfries and Galloway's decision. There's quite a few paragraphs that they make reference to it. But notwithstanding that, taking the whole information in front of them on the round, they've decided to grant the application in front of them. Obviously, if members are minded that they want to look into this further, Legal Services with planning can look at getting an external expert opinion on this. But there has been quite a considerable amount of time spent by Legal Services, by not only my team, but also the court and litigation team looking at this. And as I say, the preliminary advice that we would have to members is that there isn't really grounds of challenge on the basis of judicial review.
Members? Councillor McFarlane.
Yeah, thank you, Chair, and thank you, Laura. I think that really clears it up. My concern isn't particularly in relation to this case, but how it reflects upon us as a council, and it has been reported previously about times when planning hasn't been responded to, and I think that we need to make sure that our systems and processes are robust enough to make sure that we actually do deal with these things, and if it means calling a meeting impromptu or whatever, to make sure that we have the opportunity to discuss it and actually put forward views. I think we really need to do that. So perhaps we need a look at our processes.
Laura.
That's duly noted, Councillor. Thank you.
Yes, sorry, I'd like to correct you, but you said DPEA 3 times. It's Energy Consents Unit. It's not the appeals unit. Yes, it's one of these ones where unfortunately it was at a time of major flux in the major development team, where the regional case officer, on or around the time that it would have needed an extension, actually left the council. So I think this just one got missed. But it is something that we've become well aware of now, and certainly Laura has been working with a major team to make sure that extensions are sought wherever they're required. Just as a passing comment, 2 months is not anything like as much time as is required to get a consultation response together and through committee as is required for Section 37. So I think we're going to have to take a stance of it as soon as we get one of those in, request an extension, because it's just not physically possible for everybody to get all the consultation responses together, a report, get it. I mean, if, for example, if one came in today, we wouldn't even be able to look at August because we've got recess coming up. So the timescale is 2 months. I don't think is reasonable, but it's the framework in which we have to work, I'm afraid.
I hope the 7-week recess doesn't apply to planning staff, David. They should still be working whether we're here or no.
It applies to the committee if you need a committee decision.
We can convene one in urgent, I'm sure, if we have to. I think what's happened here is we've somehow fallen foul, and we have failed the expectations of the community, and we have been disappointed, I would imagine, as a committee, because our representation, we couldn't have followed through the natural process, and we couldn't make representation at a planning inquiry. So personally, I'm very disappointed. If members are happy to accept and note the agenda item 10, I will go with that, but I'm decidedly unhappy simply because the local community, the people that have expectations placed upon us, haven't had that materialise on this occasion. I have Councillor Slater and then Councillor Campbell.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Just a question to Laura. 2 months is a very short time window. Is it not possible that we could be allowed more time? Because to go through, as David said, all the work that's got to be put into it to make a reply. But I think that 2 months is far too short for the council to deal with that. Thank you.
Laura?
That's absolutely agreed to Councillor Slater, yes. And as David said, I think possibly what we're going to have to do going forward with planning is to ask for an extension as soon as we get it in. But what I would point out is you request it doesn't mean you're necessarily going to get it. And as you know, there's a push for wind farms and also the infrastructure to go with that behind it.
At least, Laura, if we request these things and they're denied, at least we have carried out our element of the work with in partnership with Scottish Government, whereas on this occasion we have fallen foul by no following through on what we should have done, or at least a member of staff has. John Campbell, Councillor Campbell, please.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Yeah, we've already recorded our disappointment verbally, but could that be captured in the minutes as well? That we, as a committee, we were disappointed in how things transpired.
Yeah, I think there's an expectation on or by committee members that we make a decision that is followed through to the extent of the council's capability. Councillor Barretti?
Yeah, just to go back on what you said, Chair, I sympathise and agree exactly with your statement. And from what Laura's saying, we've got to the point where we have to make a decision to go on or not. And from what I understand, if we go on, it's going to be officer time, which is going to cost, and therefore we're not really going to be able to pursue this. But to, as you say, put that statement in, I would agree with that.
Thank you. If no one, do you want back in, David?
I think the only thing to maybe put the members' minds at rest, and this is why I quoted it unusually in full on page 78, paragraph 61 of the decision notice, the Scottish ministers were very careful to say that they had fully considered the objections raised by the planning authority and the public consultations and taken all material considerations into account. I've decided no public inquiry is required. So they have still considered what the committee put forward. The only difference is that it didn't actually go through the public inquiry system.
Yeah, so therefore we didn't get the opportunity to challenge it. That's the problem for us. But anyway, it's thanks very much, David and Laura, for detailing the circumstances, because it was quite disappointing to learn that this had been approved without what I would consider due process being followed in terms of getting a public inquiry and having to make, or being able to make representation. But having said that, are we happy to note agenda item number 10? Members, thank you very much for being present today. I have no further business and I look forward to seeing you in a month. Thank you very much. Thanks, folks.